Chapter 1372. That's true. Xiaochen nodded. After some thought he said, let's do it this way. I'll help you increase your strength to level 1 of the original infant stage. Then, you can go out and fight with him. I'll just give you some pointers. Xiaochen also felt that the standard of a half-step original infant stage cultivator was too low. Since Gong Xiaoxi was willing to work for the Qin family for free, and his goal was clear, he had to at least give him some benefits. Well, what did you say? You can help me increase my strength. Gong Xiaoxi was shocked. He thought there was something wrong with his ears. Not only was exalted deity Xiao not angry at him, he was actually helping him increase his cultivation. Although Gong Xiaoxi had heard before that some high-level cultivators in the immortal cultivation world could use ingenious methods to help low-level cultivators level up, that had always been a rumor. He had never encountered such a good thing. He didn't expect that he would really encounter such a good thing. Come here. Use your usual cultivation posture and sit here. Xiaochen didn't care about Gong Xiaoxi's expression. He nodded and led him to the sofa. He pointed at the sofa and sat down. Oh, okay. Gong Xiaoxi was excited. He hadn't even done anything for the Qin family, yet exalted deity Xiao was willing to help him increase his cultivation level. Furthermore, this was after he had disturbed exalted deity Xiao's cultivation partner's rest. This was unbelievable. Exalted deity Xiao was the best person in the world. After Gong Xiaoxi sat down, Xiaochen briefly explained the method of dual cultivation. Then without further ado, he pulled Gong Xiaoxi's palms and placed them together. As he guided Gong Xiaoxi, he gradually entered the state of dual cultivation. At first, Gong Xiaoxi was still in a state of excitement. He didn't experience the uniqueness of dual cultivation. However, after he activated the mental cultivation method, he felt a majestic and rich primordial qi coming from Xiaochen's palms. It circulated throughout his body, making him feel very comfortable. Focus and calm your qi. Activate your primordial qi and cultivate like usual. Don't daydream. While Gong Xiaoxi was still experiencing this primordial qi, Xiaochen's stern voice suddenly rang out. Gong Xiaoxi's spirit was lifted, and he immediately continued to circulate his mental cultivation method, combining Xiaochen's essence qi with his own essence qi, and circulating it through his meridians. As the vigorous yuan qi continued to flow, Gong Xiaoxi's body was quickly filled with an unprecedented feeling of strength. He only needed to twist his body slightly, and all the bones in his body seemed to have been reborn, crackling nonstop. His originally small meridians also expanded by a lot in an instant. Boom! In just a few breaths of time, a loud sound exploded in Gong Xiaoxi's mind. Gong Xiaoxi's body trembled as he clenched his fists tightly. Feeling the surging yuan qi in his body, a look of satisfaction appeared on his face as he thought to himself, is this the power of a level 1 nascent soul stage cultivator? Sure enough, it's not something that I, who have been a half-step nascent soul cultivator for so many years, can compare to. It felt so good. This was the first time Xiaochen had helped a man improve his dual cultivation. After Gong Xiaoxi had successfully broken through, Xiaochen tilted his head and said, all right, you've successfully become a level 1 nascent soul stage expert. However, now is not the time to celebrate. Hurry up and go. Ayo! Without waiting for Xiaochen to finish speaking, Gong Xiaoxi suddenly let out a strange cry of excitement. He then broke into a run and dashed out the door. Ha ha ha! I've succeeded. I've finally broken through the barrier and advanced to level 1 of the nascent soul stage. This world is too beautiful. Gong Xiaoxi shouted wildly as he danced in the garden of the Qin clan like a child. He almost started dancing, because he had been stuck in the half-step nascent soul stage for a long time. Gong Xiaoxi had always felt depressed about this matter. Now that he had suddenly broken through, all the pressure in his heart was released. However, while he was jumping 3 feet high in the garden, he had neglected a very serious problem. Xiaochen, who had been interrupted, chased after Gong Xiaoxi with large strides. When he saw the elated and naked Gong Xiaoxi shouting in the garden, Xiaochen couldn't help but hold his forehead and helplessly scold. Hey! Gong Xiaoxi, are you King stupid? Your clothes are all torn, and you're still running around like an idiot. Is there something wrong with your brain? Why aren't you changing your clothes? What AF asterisk king disgrace? Because Gong Xiaoxi was shouting so loudly, many of the Qin residence's servants thought that something had happened. They all rushed over to check on the situation. When they saw the pure Gong Xiaoxi jumping in the garden, they were dumbfounded. That scene was too beautiful. In the end, even Hongzhu, who was washing her face and rinsing her mouth, was alarmed. However, she had only come over to take a glance before she quickly turned her head away. In her heart, she had already poured out all the most vicious words she knew on Gong Xiaoxi's head. Gong Xiaoxi was in the middle of laughing, but in the blink of an eye, he was stunned by Xiao Chen's scolding. Suddenly, a light breeze blew past, and he felt a trace of coldness on his body. Very quickly, he realized that something was wrong. When he looked down, his face completely darkened. He hurriedly covered his private parts and squatted on the ground, his face burning with heat. In fact, Gong Xiaoxi also knew that when he broke through to the next level, all his clothes would explode, leaving nothing behind. However, he was too excited this time, and had completely forgotten about this matter. Now, not only was he jumping and jumping naked in someone else's garden, he was shouting loudly like a lunatic, attracting people over. In the end, he had completely lost all face in front of Xiao Chun and the Qin residence's servants. Now Gong Xiaoxi could only hope that they would forget everything that they had seen today, and not spread his scandal. Otherwise, in the future, in the Burning Heavens faction, no, even in the entire Lucian County, he would not be able to survive. Not long after, Qin Xingling was also alarmed. He hurriedly ran over, and saw a group of people stretching their necks to surround Xiao Chun from afar. He stood helplessly at the door of the room, his hand holding his head, as if he was having a splitting headache. Qin Xingling shouted a few times, and squeezed into the crowd with great difficulty. Only then did he see the naked Gong Xiaoxi squatting on the ground. Immediately, he was confused and did not know what had happened. However, Qin Xingling had been the clan leader for many years, so he calmed down immediately. He frowned slightly, and first dispersed the surrounding servants who were watching the commotion. Then, he ran to the side of the pond on the other side of the garden. He stretched out his hand, and plucked a few larger lotus leaves. Then, he turned around, and covered a few sensitive parts of Gong Xiaoxi's body with them. After protecting Gong Xiaoxi, Qin Xingling bade farewell to Xiao Chun, then led Gong Xiaoxi out of the garden, probably to change his clothes. Chapter 1373. Husband Xiao Chun, what's wrong with that person? Not only did he knock on the door early in the morning, he was also running around without any clothes on. Furthermore, he was screaming like a ghost. Hongzhu said unhappily as she watched Gong Xiaoxi's awkward figure hurrying away. If she hadn't turned her head fast enough, she might have seen something she shouldn't have, and even gotten a pinprick. He probably just forgot that he wasn't wearing any clothes. Xiao Chun rubbed her nose and sighed gloomily. Hongzhu blinked her eyes, and suddenly remembered that after she left the room to wash up, only Xiao Chun and Gong Xiaoxi were left in the room. When she recalled that the fellow was not wearing any clothes, she immediately stared at Xiao Chun in surprise and said, "You, what were you doing in the room? Could it be?" Before Hongzhu could finish speaking, Xiao Chun hurriedly waved her hand to stop her speculation and snappily said, "Don't make wild guesses. Just now, I was dual cultivating with Gong Xiaoxi, and then helped him break through to the first level of the nascent soul stage. That's why his clothes were completely torn apart." Then why didn't you tell him to put on his clothes?" Hongzhu blurted out in surprise. Xiao Chun spread her hands and said, "I originally wanted to tell him to put on his clothes before going out, but I didn't expect him to be so excited that he rushed out without waiting for me to finish speaking. What else could I do?" That's strange." Hongzhu suddenly thought of a question, and tilted her head in confusion. "His clothes were completely torn apart, so why weren't yours destroyed?" Xiao Chun was just about to answer when Hongzhu suddenly slapped her forehead, and asked with a look of sudden realization, "Wow, so now you won't tear apart your clothes, even when dual cultivating? Then why did you take off your clothes in front of this big sister, when we were dual cultivating? Tell me honestly, Did you have some ulterior motives towards me? I didn't even level up, so how could my clothes have exploded? Xiao Chen couldn't help rolling his eyes, completely speechless at Hong Zhu's wild imagination. If you don't believe me, then next time I'll just dual cultivate with you while wearing my clothes. That way neither of us will lose out. Hong Zhu pondered for a moment, then rolled his eyes and seriously said, Then you should take it off. Anyway, we've already dual cultivated so many times, what haven't we seen? Why? Didn't you say you didn't want to see me naked? Why did you suddenly change your mind? Xiao Chen was extremely puzzled by Hong Zhu's sudden change in attitude. There's no why, I just can't. Hong Zhu pouted, snorted and said, When I think that I, your big sister, have to take off my clothes, but you don't have to, wouldn't that be a big loss for me? It's only fair if everyone takes off their clothes together. It's just a simple dual cultivation. What's so unfair about it? Xiao Chen was both annoyed and amused as he shook his head and teased. After all this time, it turns out that you're the one who has ulterior motives towards me. Xiao Chen had long seen through the little demoness Hong Zhu's thoughts. She wanted nothing more than to have some sort of relationship with him that was beyond friendship. However, he really couldn't refuse her politely, otherwise, he wouldn't even know how she was going to screw him over if she took advantage of him. Hee, it's good that you know. Husband Xiao Chen, your big sister has a lot of experience in certain aspects. Do you want to give it a try? Hong Zhu winked at Xiao Chen as she spoke in a charming and slow voice. In truth, Hong Zhu was just casually teasing Xiao Chen. She had no experience in this aspect at all, and was still a standard virgin. She had even less combat experience than Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen was just about to refuse when he saw that Gong Xiaoxi had already put on his clothes and was jogging back. Heavenly Immortal Xiao, thank you for helping me so much. Gong Xiaoxi strode to stand in front of Xiao Chen and excitedly grasped his hands. Choking with emotion, she said, If I hadn't been fortunate enough to meet you this time, I don't know how long I would have to stay at this stage of half-step nascent soul. I'm really grateful. Xiaoxi will forever remember this in my heart, and will never be able to repay you. Qin Xingling also came over, and stood to the side, as he watched Gong Xiaoxi continuously thank Xiao Chen. Although he didn't say anything, Qin Xingling was indeed secretly pondering in his heart. If he could let Heavenly Immortal Xiao find an opportunity to guide that brat Tao Tian, then the Qin clan would be even more like a fish in water in the future. He just didn't know if Heavenly Immortal Xiao would agree to this request of his. After all, the Qin clan was only a small clan in a small town. It couldn't compare to the Burning Heavens faction at all, and couldn't give Heavenly Immortal Xiao as many benefits. Hong Zhu was in the midst of cultivating his relationship with Xiao Chen when he was suddenly disturbed by Gong Xiaoxi. Recalling the scene from before and the situation from this morning, Hong Zhu was so angry that he stomped his feet. He simply raised his leg and ruthlessly kicked Gong Xiaoxi's body. As he kicked, Hong Zhu angrily shouted, Why is it you again, you filthy uncle? Running around naked in someone else's residence, don't you feel ashamed? You really don't have the slightest sense of shame, humph. Gong Xiaoxi was in the midst of expressing his gratitude to Xiao Chen when he was suddenly kicked by Hong Zhu. At first he was stunned. He felt that Hong Zhu's kick didn't have much strength behind it. He reckoned that this little girl's level was relatively low and couldn't do much harm to him. However, when he thought of the glare that Hong Zhu had given him, Gong Xiaoxi's mind suddenly lit up. This is Heavenly Immortal Zhao's Dao companion. So what if her level is low? I'll kill you with just a little pillow talk. Ouch! Gong Xiaoxi's legs immediately weakened, and he directly fell to the ground. With a bitter face, he apologized. Master's wife, I'm sorry for disturbing you today. This disciple deserves to die. Please be magnanimous and spare me. Bah! Who's your Shifu? Hong Zhu was just about to scold him when he suddenly paused. His mind immediately became active. This guy is right. Since Xiao Chen had helped Gong Xiaoxi increase his level, then he was naturally Xiao Chen's disciple. As Xiao Chen's wife, it wasn't wrong for him to call her master's wife. Suddenly becoming master's wife, Hong Zhu felt very happy. He deliberately cleared his throat and said seriously, Forget it, seeing that you have such a sweet mouth. This master's wife can't be bothered to bicker with you. I'll let it go this time, but be more careful next time. Hee, then I'll thank master's wife. Gong Xiaoxi saw that Hongju's expression had softened, and was even faintly happy. He hurriedly increased his flattery and said, I didn't expect master's wife to not only be as beautiful as a fairy, but also so magnanimous. You don't hold a grudge at all. I, Gong Xiaoxi, am truly fortunate to have met you and Master Xiao. Hongju clasped his hands behind his back and nodded with great satisfaction. Although he was clearly secretly delighted, he pretended to be calm and said, as expected of a deacon elder from a large sect. You're quite good at chatting. Later, master's wife will ask your master to teach you a few more times. Perhaps you'll soon be able to soar through the clouds and break through to a higher realm. Chapter 1374. Really? Thank you, master's wife. Gong Xiaoxi was grinning from ear to ear. He didn't think that this master's wife would be so easy to coax. He rolled his eyes and immediately came up with a new idea. Since that's the case, why don't master's wife and master come to our Burning Sky sect and stay for a few days? Gong Xiaoxi consciously changed from a fallen position to a half-kneeling position, and asked with a flattering expression, This way, I can. Gong Xiaoxi was just about to say a few more words of praise when he was rudely interrupted by Xiao Chun. Enough. Stop acting like a two-man show. Seeing the two of them echo each other, Xiao Chun was dazed for a long time before he finally understood what was going on. He couldn't help but kick Gong Xiaoxi again, and said with a sullen expression, Who the hell is your master? If I had a disciple like you, I would have vomited blood and died long ago. Hurry up and go somewhere cool. Don't talk about such useless things. Ouch. Gong Xiaoxi had just gotten up when he was kicked again. He immediately let out a miserable shriek, as he was kicked several dozen feet away. This time, Gong Xiaoxi wasn't faking it. He had really been kicked away. It should be known that Xiao Chen's strength was much higher than Hongju's. A casual kick would be enough to kill him. Fortunately, although Xiao Chun was angry on the surface, he didn't use any yuan qi. Therefore, Gong Xiaoxi only tumbled and looked a little embarrassed, but he didn't suffer any serious injuries. Husband Xiao Chen, although this disciple of yours is a little old, he seems to be quite interesting. Look at how far he's rolled. His legs should be quite agile. Hongju chuckled as he tried to persuade Xiao Chun from the side. Right. Master's wife has such good eyes. Before Xiao Chun could say anything, Gong Xiaoxi crawled up again and quickly ran back. He nodded repeatedly with a shy face. Hongju was overjoyed to hear Gong Xiaoxi call her master's wife. He pulled Xiao Chun and said coquettishly, Husband Xiao Chun, why don't you take him in? In the future, he can still help us do some odd jobs. If he really can't do it, he can stay and serve us tea. It was clear that Gong Xiaoxi's sugar-coated bullets were very effective on Hongju. Otherwise he would not have tried so hard to put in a good word for him. Master's wife really has a good eye. Gong Xiaoxi immediately spouted nonsense with a straight face. When I was young, I was a servant in a big family. Whether it's serving tea or massaging, I've learned all of them. I guarantee that I can do them well. Immortal Xiao, don't hesitate. Just listen to master's wife and accept me. In order to become exalted Immortal Xiao Chen's disciple, Gong Xiaoxi shamelessly rubbed his head against Xiao Chen's disciple before he was willing to give up. Gong Xiaoxi did not care about the issue of face. As long as he could get exalted Immortal Xiao to help him dual cultivate a few more times. Even if he had to do some manual labor. So what? Even if he was asked to sing and laugh and be a clown, he was willing. After all, in the immortal cultivation world, strength was the foundation of everything. Where else could he find such a good thing to break through, after dual cultivating with exalted Immortal Xiao once? Elder Gong, that doesn't sound right. Just as Gong Xiaoxi's voice fell, Qin Shengling, who had been standing silently at the side, suddenly spoke. He asked with a surprised expression, I remember that your father is an expert cultivator from the Burning Sky faction, right? When the Burning Sky faction was recruiting disciples, I was lucky enough to see him from afar. At that time, you were by his side, and you were quite young. Before Gong Xiaoxi could speak, Xiao Chun, who had a gloomy face, suddenly laughed. He looked at Qin Shengling and joked. So when you told me that you had seen Gong Xiaoxi before, it was actually just a glance from afar. I was wondering why when he came in yesterday, he said that it was the first time he met you. Turns out you are just a passerby. Hee, exalted immortal Xiao must be joking. Qin Shengling was exposed by Xiao Chun, and the corner of his mouth twitched awkwardly. You, what do you know? Do I have to tell you in advance that I am going to be a servant? Gong Xiaoxi felt a little embarrassed when he was exposed on the spot. He glared fiercely at Qin Shengling and retorted stubbornly. Qin Shengling refused to let it go. He looked at Gong Xiaoxi in confusion and continued to ask, Elder Gong, you have such an illustrious background. Why are you going to be a servant? Even if you are willing, your father will definitely not agree. If this news were to be spread, it would be too ugly. It would definitely damage the reputation of your Burning Sky faction. Actually, after being the family head for so long, Qin Shengling naturally had a way of observing people's words and expressions. Although he said so, he also understood the purpose of Gong Xiaoxi's nonsense. It was so that he could shamelessly stay by exalted immortal Zhao's side and successfully become his disciple. Knowing Gong Xiaoxi's purpose, Qin Shengling still opened his mouth to expose it. Of course, he also had his own thoughts. Actually, Qin Shengling hoped that Qin Taotian could also become Xiao Chen's disciple. If Xiao Chen really accepted Gong Xiaoxi as his disciple, then Qin Taotian probably wouldn't have a chance. After all, the gap between the two of them was still very big. Therefore, after Qin Shengling, who knew Gong Xiaoxi's background, heard his words, he thought of ways to obstruct Gong Xiaoxi and didn't want Gong Xiaoxi to succeed. Gong Xiaoxi was about to go crazy because of Qin Shengling. Fortunately, although he was furious, his brain was spinning rapidly. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and hurriedly explained, I'm not lying. Our Burning Sky faction has a cooperative relationship with the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce. At that time, I just happened to want to go out to train, so I was sent to a large family to experience the hardships of the people's livelihood. What's so strange about this? Oh, you actually cooperated with the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce? Hearing Gong Xiaoxi's words, Xiao Chen's heart moved and immediately asked. Yes, Gong Xiaoxi nodded. Just as he was about to say something, he was stopped by Xiao Chun with a wave of his hand. That Chamber of Commerce seems to be quite famous in the cultivation world. It seems that many sects have cooperated with them. Xiao Chun frowned and asked. Their scale is quite large. Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly nodded and echoed. I heard that their coverage is very wide. Not only do they have a branch in our Lucian prefecture, but they also have branches in other prefectural towns. Many people are proud to be able to enter the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce. Then, do you know what they do? Xiao Chen continued to ask. I'm not too sure what they do specifically. Gong Xiaoxi scratched his head and tried hard to recall the information he knew. I only know that they not only have signed agreements with many sects and clans in the cultivation world, they can mobilize their cultivators at will. Moreover, they also have many spirit crystal mines with sufficient reserves. Every day they can collect tens of thousands of spirit crystals, possibly even more. Chapter 1375. Xiao Chen pondered for a while. Having spirit crystals was equivalent to having a reserve of funds. They would have the capital to negotiate and trade with others. Signing agreements with sects and clans would also mean that they would have a reserve of power in their hands. Their combat power would also be greatly increased. With money and manpower, it seemed like this Chamber of Commerce was planning something big. After thinking for a while, Xiao Chen asked Gong Xiaoxi a question that he had been thinking about for a long time. Then, who is the boss behind this merchant association? I really don't know about this. Our Burning Sky sect is actually not very famous in the immortal cultivation world. We can only be considered as below average, so we don't know about that level of information. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head helplessly and said gloomily. Actually, Xiao Chen had also guessed Gong Xiaoxi's answer. The information that Gong Xiaoxi provided could only confirm his previous speculation that the power behind the Dada Immortal Cultivation Merchant Association was extremely powerful. However, there was no other help. Ever since he entered the immortal cultivation world, Xiao Chun had always wanted to find a suitable breakthrough point to understand the distribution of power in the immortal cultivation world. This way, he could find the power with the strongest connections. Then, he could use them to find the whereabouts of Cheng Minjing and the rest of the girls. During this period of time, it seemed that the Dada Immortal Cultivation Merchant Association was indeed a good choice. However, Xiao Chun still didn't understand their specific structure and who the big boss behind the scenes was. Thus, he didn't dare to act rashly. Previously, Xiao Chun had an idea. He wanted to capture Director Liu, who came to the Qin clan to show off his strength, but left with his tail between his legs. He wanted to force him to use the Merchant Association's power to help him find the rest of the people. However, from the looks of it now, he really couldn't do anything to him. Otherwise, not only would he lose his life, even the Qin clan might be implicated. It seemed like he had to consider other methods. Qin clan's bastards, listen up. I will give you the time it takes for a joss stick to burn. Immediately hand over the murderer who killed the secluded forest sex cultivator Guan Weikai. Otherwise, I will tear everyone in the Qin clan into pieces. Just as Xiao Chen's thoughts were in a mess, a deafening roar came from outside the Qin residence, forcibly interrupting his train of thought. According to the unbridled aura released by the newcomer, Xiao Chen judged that the newcomer should be at the second or third level of the nascent soul realm. Furthermore, the aura was slightly fluctuating. He reckoned that the newcomer had just broken through to the next level not long ago. Gong Xiaoxi was thinking about how to continue begging Xiao Chun to accept him as a disciple, when he suddenly heard a sound coming from outside. He subconsciously muttered, "Hey, this person's voice is very familiar. I seem to have heard it somewhere not long ago." Qin Xingling and Hong Zhu looked at him, as if they were looking at an idiot. Could it be that this guy's memory had deteriorated with age, and he had forgotten why he had come here so quickly? That person's words clearly indicated that the Qin family of the Tranquil Forest sect was here to pick a fight. Gong Xiaoxi thought about it carefully again, and then suddenly realized something. He slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, I remember. He is that old thing with the surname Ing from the Tranquil Forest sect. I didn't think that he would actually dare to come here. He must be tired of living. If that's the case, then go out and meet him. It's also a good opportunity to test out the strength of the nascent soul realm that you have just broken through to." Xiao Chen shrugged his shoulders indifferently and instructed calmly, "Understood. I was just worried that there was no one for me to test my moves on." Gong Xiaoxi replied excitedly. He rolled up his sleeves and ran in the direction of the main door. Gong Xiaoxi had just broken through to the first level of the nascent soul realm. He was bursting with a sense of accomplishment and felt that he was very awesome. Furthermore, he had exalted Immortal Xiao to back him up. He was full of confidence and directly rushed out of the door, ready to slap old Ghost Ying's face. "Husband Xiao Chen, don't I feel that this is a little inappropriate?" Looking at Gong Xiaoxi's ambitious back, Hong Zhu was a little worried. She frowned and said, "Although Gong Xiaoxi has broken through, the other party reached the nascent soul realm earlier than him. He must be much more experienced than him. Why don't we go out and take a look?" At this moment, Hong Zhu was indeed very worried. If Gong Xiaoxi was killed by the other party, then wouldn't he have no one to help him? Xiao Chen nodded and led Hong Zhu and Qin Shengling towards the main door. Xiao Chen naturally understood that there was a considerable gap between Gong Xiaoxi and the other party. It could even be said that they were not on the same level at all. The reason why he chose to let Gong Xiaoxi take the lead was mainly to give him a chance to hone himself. Moreover, the other party's strength was only at the second or third level of the nascent soul realm. With him holding the line, Gong Xiaoxi basically did not pose too much of a threat. Gong Xiaoxi did not know that Xiao Chen had followed him. He covered his head and anxiously rushed to the main door. When he raised his head, he saw an old man dressed in a dark blue robe standing at the door. At this moment, his hands were behind his back, and he was staring at the plaque hanging above the main door of the Qin Manor. a trace of killing intent condensed in his cold eyes. Gong Xiaoxi looked, and sure enough, it was a familiar face. It was the old man who had provoked the Burning Sky faction yesterday. Old Ghost Ing from the Tranquil Forest sect. Oh, you old thing, you have quite a lot of guts. Gong Xiaoxi could not be bothered to delay any longer. He sneered and said sarcastically, "Your own faction's disciples were killed by the Qin family, and now you still dare to come here to die. I admire your courage very much." "Humph, you're full of nonsense." The old man in blue snorted angrily. He withdrew his gaze from the plaque and said coldly, "After waiting for so long, your Qin family finally dares to come out. Gong Xiaoxi, why is it you? Why are you at the Qin family?" This old man in blue was the senior uncle of the sect leader of the Tranquil Forest sect, Ing Taichi. He was also the senior uncle Ing, who had just broken through to the 3rd level of the nascent Soul Realm 2 days ago. The Tranquil Forest sect and the Burning Sky faction were the 2 main factions in the Lucian prefecture. Therefore, Ing Taichi was not unfamiliar with the elder deacon of the Burning Sky faction, Gong Xiaoxi. What surprised Ing Taichi was that he had clearly seen Gong Xiaoxi at the entrance of the Burning Sky faction yesterday. Why was he here today? Could it be that he was a helper invited by the Qin family? Old Ghost Ing, you control the sky, the earth, and the air. But can you control me? I like to be a guest at the Qin family, can I? Gong Xiaoxi squinted his eyes and shook his legs. He asked loudly, "You old thing, why are you shouting at someone's door so early in the morning? What is the meaning of this? Can't you let me sleep well? What does it have to do with me where you go to be a guest?" Ing Taichi glared at Gong Xiaoxi and said with a murderous look, "I have my reasons for coming to the Qin family. I don't believe that you don't know. How would I know what you are doing here instead of dancing in the square? Could it be that you are jogging to train your body?" Gong Xiaoxi used what he had just learned and used a new term from Xiao Chen. Chapter 1376. Ing Taichi was startled at first, then he said fiercely, "Then I'll tell you again. The Qin family members killed the disciples of my secluded forest sect. I must make the murderer pay with his life. If you want to interfere, I don't mind sending you on your way. Anyway, I don't like the people of Burning Sky sect. Killing one of you won't be enough." "Ha ha ha. You old chicken-ate lantern, you sure talk big." Gong Xiaoxi laughed for a while. Then he suddenly changed his expression and said seriously, "Since you don't know how to appreciate kindness, then don't leave today." "What did you say?" Ing Taichi was about to laugh at his arrogance, but he was stuck in the middle of his sentence. Gong Xiaoxi quickly took out his crimson flame bead, muttered an incantation, and injected some yuan qi into it. Then, he pushed his right palm lightly, and the originally weak flame in the crimson flame bead suddenly grew, wrapping the entire bead in it, turning it into a small fireball, and quickly flew towards Ing Taichi. You've actually broken through to level 1 of the original infant stage?" Looking at the oncoming fireball, and the yuan qi that Gong Xiaoxi was emitting, Ing Taichi blurted out in shock, "How is it? Are you afraid? Have a taste of the power of my crimson flame bead." Gong Xiaoxi shouted proudly. Unfortunately, Ing Taichi was only distracted for a moment. He quickly came back to his senses. He pushed off the ground with his toes and dodged to the left, dodging the fireball attack by a hair's breadth. Although Ing Taichi successfully avoided the direct attack of the fireball, his dark blue robe, which was fluttering in the wind, was accidentally set on fire. Smelling the faint burning smell of the cloth, Ing Taichi's face changed, and he quickly waved his hand to cut off the corner of his robe. Seeing that his originally elegant blue robe was cut off, the murderous intent in Ing Taichi's eyes became even more intense. "Old thing, I didn't expect your reaction to be so fast. Why don't you try this again?" Gong Xiaoxi did not care about Ing Taichi's reaction at all. He grinned and controlled the crimson flame bead to fly back. Gong Xiaoxi chanted another incantation, extinguishing all the flames around the bead. Then the scarlet flame bead grew larger and larger, almost as tall as a person. Then with a flash, Ing Taichi, who was still looking at the clothes, was sucked into the bead. Seeing that Ing Taichi was hit, Gong Xiaoxi immediately changed the shape of his mouth and changed to another incantation. The flame that was jumping in the bead wrapped the bead again, and burned fiercely on the outside. As the flames burned brighter, the temperature inside the scarlet flame bead continued to rise. It looked as if it was going to roast Ing Taichi inside. At this moment, Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu had also arrived at the main entrance. Qin Shengling had gone to arrange for the guards to be on guard. Although Elder Gong and Xiao Chen were overseeing things, he still had to do his job properly. Xiao Chen watched as the scarlet flame pearl burned continuously, and Ing Taichi, who was inside, was sweating profusely. Ing Taichi's face was flushed as he struggled to resist. Xiao Chen asked impatiently, "Gong Xiaoxi, what game are you playing? Hurry up and get rid of that old man. Don't dawdle here and waste my time." "Hee master's wife, you're here." Turning his head to look behind him, Gong Xiaoxi saw that it was Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu. He happily explained. "That old man relied on the fact that the secluded forest sect was a little stronger than us, and usually attacked our burning sky sect. But today, he actually fell into my hands because of his carelessness. Anyway, I don't plan on killing him, so I might as well torture him a little longer. It can be considered as helping our sect disciples vent their anger. Oh, with your current cultivation, forget about killing that old man. It would be good if you could even hurt him." Xiao Chen shook his head and shifted his gaze to the huge fireball. He said, "I advise you not to play with fire anymore, otherwise. Forget it, it's already too late." Xiao Chen was very clear that since the opponent's strength was much stronger than Gong Xiaoxi's, he obviously wouldn't be captured so easily. He had only been fooled by Gong Xiaoxi, who had suddenly leveled up. Besides, in this short period of time, the opponent had already begun to counterattack. "Ah, what do you mean?" Gong Xiaoxi scratched his head in confusion. He followed Xiao Chen's gaze and looked back, only to find that the fire of his scarlet flame bead was gradually weakening. Ing Taichi, who was trapped inside, was surrounded by a layer of white mist. Moreover, that mist was still condensing, and some of it had even turned into ice crystals. Crack! Following a crisp sound, a small crack suddenly appeared on the surface of the scarlet flame bead, and a trace of cold air gradually seeped out from the crack. Gong Xiaoxi's expression changed as he looked at the crack in disbelief. He thought that it was Ing Taichi's smokescreen, so he rubbed his eyes with force. However, he discovered that not only did the crack not disappear, it was also continuously expanding. Following the expansion of the crack to its limit, the entire scarlet flame bead was finally split into two, and directly split open. The cold air that had condensed inside the bead also surged out violently, dispersing in all directions. Within the cold air, a dark blue strip of cloth was faintly discernible. How is this possible?" Gong Xiaoxi cried out involuntarily. "The scarlet flame bead is an artifact that has been passed down from the ancient times of our Burning Heavens faction. How could it be split into two so easily? How did that old thing do it?" Gong Xiaoxi, who saw this scene, was already dumbfounded. He stood there dumbfounded, not knowing what to do. If his father knew that the scarlet flame bead had been destroyed in his hands, then he would be finished. A mere insignificant skill. Do you think that only your Burning Heavens faction has such a high-grade artifact? Ing Taichi's sinister and aged voice suddenly sounded in the cold air. Gong Xiaoxi squinted his eyes and looked over, only to see Ing Taichi lightly waving his hand, parting the white fog in front of him. His right hand held a silver-white crystal, and his left hand pointed at Gong Xiaoxi. He said lightly, "If it wasn't for the fact that this old man also has the ice soul crystal that has been passed down from the ancient times, I'm afraid I would have really fallen for your trick today. How dare you? It seems that I was too careless. I forgot that your cultivation technique is of the water attribute, you old fart." F***ck. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head hatefully. He was about to continue speaking when he suddenly felt a chill. He raised his head in puzzlement and looked forward. In the end, the scene in front of him scared him so much that he almost peed his pants on the spot. He saw Ing Taichi quickly inject Yuan Qi into the crystal, and then the silver-white crystal flew into the air with a whoosh. It circled around Ing Taichi once, and instantly withdrew the white fog behind him into the crystal. Chapter 1377. In the blink of an eye, as soon as the white mist was withdrawn, the crystal suddenly let out a buzzing sound, condensing the mist into countless sword-like icicles. Then, with a sharp piercing sound, the icicles shot towards where Gong Xiaoxi was standing from all directions. What the hell? Gong Xiaoxi cursed inwardly. He did not dare to be careless when he saw the situation. First, he covered his body with essence to strengthen his defense. Then, he stared at the ice thorns flying at him, and used his movement technique to dodge them with all his might. Unfortunately, there were too many ice spikes. Although Gong Xiaoxi tried his best to dodge, he was not careful. His right leg was immediately cut by one of the ice spikes. Moreover, a thin layer of frost quickly formed on the wound and continued to spread. Feeling a bone-piercing chill coming from his right leg, Gong Xiaoxi panicked. What was even more frightening was that he found that because the wound on his leg was frozen, his dodging was forced to slow down. Pooh, pooh, pooh. As Gong Xiaoxi's movements slowed down, his limbs were quickly cut by the ice spikes. What was even more frightening was that every cut began to rapidly freeze. The bone-piercing chill and heart-wrenching pain made Gong Xiaoxi's face pale, and he felt very uncomfortable. Kid, weren't you quite awesome just now? You can't take it anymore after being stabbed a few times? Ing Taichi sneered and mocked. Without waiting for Gong Xiaoxi to respond, Ing Taichi continued to pour primordial qi into the ice soul crystal, and controlled it to create dozens of ice spikes. He aimed them at Gong Xiaoxi's chest from afar. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a cruel smile. He casually waved his sword fingers, and the ice spikes responded. Gong Xiaoxi felt a strong chill in his heart when he saw the extremely sharp icicle heading straight for his heart. He hurriedly cried out, Master, save me. I can't beat that old man. Help me take care of him. Sigh. I told you to be careful and finish the battle as soon as possible. You just wouldn't listen. In the end, don't you still need me to take action? How useless. Xiaochen shook his head helplessly. He condensed a fireball and threw it out, reprimanding him mercilessly. The fireball landed accurately in front of Gong Xiaoxi and immediately burst into a wall of fire. All the approaching ice spikes instantly evaporated and turned into water vapor. Phew, that scared me. Master is so awesome. Gong Xiaoxi, who was saved from the brink of death, heaved a sigh of relief and sat on the ground. However, Gong Xiaoxi did not dare to be negligent. He immediately circulated his yuan qi in an attempt to melt the frost on his limbs. However, the effects were extremely slow. His wounds still had a strange icy blue color. Although the situation was serious, Gong Xiaoxi had no other choice but to use his qi. He could only use his primordial qi to melt it. Otherwise he would be. If he did not do anything, the frost would freeze his blood. And who? Ing Taichi originally thought that he could kill Gong Xiaoxi directly. He did not expect that he would be saved by a young man. He could not help but be slightly startled, and said with a gloomy face, I didn't expect a small Qin family to be able to invite so many experts. You quickly tell me your name. This old man doesn't kill nameless people. After being stunned for a moment, Ing Taichi quickly realized that this young man's strength should not be low. He had only used a small fireball to evaporate all the icicles condensed by his ice crystal. He was probably not easy to deal with. Xiaochen could not be bothered with Ing Taichi's provocation. He reached out and gently patted Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder. He quietly injected a trace of primordial qi into Gong Xiaoxi's body to help him melt the ice on his body. Then he took the opportunity to heal all the wounds. Thank you for saving me, Master. Xiaoxi will never forget it. Gong Xiaoxi was pleasantly surprised to find that his injuries had completely healed. He immediately stood up and moved his hands and feet. He thanked Xiaochen gratefully. When Ing Taichi saw this scene, he could not help but be even more surprised. It should be known that if the ice crystal's attack encountered an attribute martial skill that restrained it, it might really be blocked. But the most extraordinary thing about it was that after the enemy was hit, the power of frost would be like moss in a dark corner, dispelling and growing again. It would become an inextinguishable hidden injury in the body's skin. Even if the enemy managed to escape after being injured, this kind of injury would follow him forever. Every time it was windy, rainy, or cold winter, it would cause unbearable pain, But there was no cure. Conventional medicine could not cure it at all. Just now, he only saw Xiao Chen put his hand on Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder. How could he directly cure Gong Xiaoxi? Ying Taichi could not help but be puzzled. He stared at Xiao Chen with a solemn expression, and did not dare to launch a sneak attack. Xiao Chen looked at the lively Gong Xiaoxi and said angrily, "You have just been promoted to the nascent soul stage. Just treat this as practice. Do you know how big the gap between you and others is? Go back and quickly consolidate your cultivation. Don't come out and embarrass yourself. I don't have a disciple as weak as you." "Hehe, I know." Gong Xiaoxi smiled and nodded repeatedly. He first bent his waist and took a few steps back. Suddenly, he thought of something and said with an evil smile, "That's right, master. I have a favor to ask of you. Please don't kill that old thing. Just beat him until he's crippled. That way, he can live to return to the secluded forest sect. In this way, our Burning Heavens faction can laugh at them." All right. You're so troublesome." Xiao Chen waved his hand impatiently and said, "Since you've asked me, then I'll reluctantly agree. Anyway, it's just a matter of one move." "Thank you, master. Master is too good to your disciple." Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but be overjoyed. He hurriedly thanked him, and took a few steps back. He stood beside Hong Zhu, and looked at Ying Taichi with a complacent expression that said, "Let's see how you die." Looking at the livid Ying Taichi, Xiao Chen shrugged his shoulders as if nothing had happened. He first moved his shoulders leisurely, then waved at him and said, "Old thing, did you hear what we said just now? Hurry up and let this young master punch you. I promise I'll be careful. I'll only beat you until you're crippled. I definitely won't beat you to death. Brat, although I don't know who you are, you're really too arrogant." Ying Taichi looked at Xiao Chen and Gong Xiaoxi discussing among themselves and directly deciding his fate. He couldn't help but laugh in anger as he stared at Xiao Chen and said sternly, "Oh, is that so?" Xiao Chen spread out his hands and said indifferently, "So what?" Chapter 1378. Don't waste your time. Do you think a ball of fire can extinguish my 9-frost snowstorm? Too naive. What? Ying Taichi said proudly. Before he could finish his sentence, the confident expression on his face suddenly froze. What? Ying Taichi clutched his abdomen with his trembling hands and knelt on the ground. His face was full of disbelief. What just happened? What happened to his Dan Tian? After returning to the tranquil forest sect with much difficulty, Ying Taichi faced the anxious sect leader Guan. He did not choose to tell him the truth, but instead rested in the secret room for a few days. When he felt slightly better, Ying Taichi ordered his disciple to call sect leader Guan over. He planned to discuss the future plans of the tranquil forest sect with him. Ying Taichi only felt a faint flash of bluish-purple light. Then, the snowstorm that was about to reach Xiao Chen suddenly disappeared. It was swallowed up completely, leaving not a single trace behind. The cold air that was originally dissipating in the surroundings immediately gathered together, forming a snowstorm with ice crystals. It emitted a terrifying might, mixed with a killing intent that could destroy heaven and earth, and swept towards Xiao Chen with a whistling sound. "Sigh, there's no need for that." Ying Taichi shook his head and said helplessly, "I'm completely crippled. I didn't expect the Burning Sky sect to hide such a powerful expert. With just one punch, my Dan Tian was completely shattered. It seems that if the Tranquil Forest sect does not quickly find some external help, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive in the future. Old thing, your Dan Tian has already been destroyed by me." At this time, Xiao Chen had already returned to the front door. He looked down at Ying Taichi and said, "If you don't want to die, hurry up and scram. Go back and wait for the Burning Sky sect to laugh at you." The fire of the underworld came out of Xiao Chen's body with a whoosh. It first circled around Xiao Chen happily, then turned around and quickly rushed towards the snowstorm that was wreaking havoc towards Xiao Chen. "I didn't expect. All of this was actually caused by your Burning Heavens faction. I was wondering why Guan Weikai, who was at the 7th level of the Gold Core stage, suddenly died. So it was also your doing." Ying Taichi coldly glanced at the guards who were glaring at him. He stared at Gong Xiaoxi and gritted his teeth. "I'll remember this. Sooner or later, I'll pay you back in full. Your burning heaven faction, just you wait. Not much, but today you Gong Xiaoxi, and everyone else from the Qin family will not leave alive. Ing Taichi grunted coldly as his eyes suddenly glowed brightly. After that, he injected all the energy in his body into the ice soul crystal. If not for his yuan qi being depleted, Ing Taichi would have thought that he had not let go of the 9-chill snowstorm at all. However, in the depths of Ing Taichi's heart, the seed of revenge had already been firmly rooted. As long as he could survive this time, he must eliminate the Burning Sky faction, no matter what price he had to pay. Seeing that there was no more show to watch, Hongzhu made a face at Ing Taichi and skipped away with Xiao Chun. This magic trick is not bad. Unfortunately, you overestimate yourself. Xiao Chun shook his head. His body did not move as he ordered. Nethery, go and extinguish the blizzard. Looking at the bluish-purple flame floating in the air, Ing Taichi was so shocked that he did not know what to say. One should know that the 9-chill snowstorm was his ultimate move. It was a consummate skill that could only be released after he had condensed the essence of the ice soul crystal. He did not expect that it would be extinguished by a mere flame. Ing Taichi did not intend to bicker with Gong Xiaoxi anymore. Enduring the sharp pain in his dantian, he turned around and dragged his heavy footsteps out of the Qin family. One should know that Ing Taichi was the only cultivator in the Tranquil Forest sect who had broken through to the 3rd level of the original infant stage. Now that even he had been crippled, wouldn't the Tranquil Forest sect be at the mercy of others? Before Ing Taichi could recover from the shock, he suddenly felt a blur in front of him, as if a figure had passed by. Then, there was a tearing pain in his dantian, and the remaining primordial qi in his body disappeared, leaving not a single drop behind. Ha 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 ha. Old devil Ing, listen to me clearly. Looking at Ing Taichi's pained expression, Gong Xiaoxi could not help but laugh out loud. He pointed at Ing Taichi and shouted, "He is my master, exalted immortal Xiao. As for his name, a rookie like you does not deserve to know it. Junior Uncle Ing, how are your injuries? Do you want me to send someone to get you some heavenly treasures, so that you can recover faster?" After sect leader Guan was summoned, he looked at the pale Ing Taichi and asked with a concerned expression. Ing Taichi looked at Xiao Chen's gradually disappearing figure with his eyes wide open. He then turned to look at Gong Xiaoxi, who had a smug look on his face. His mind flashed like a spark. He had finally pieced together the entire sequence of events. I see. Good, very good. This time, I really understand that you actually have a master. Ing Taichi struggled to stand up and glared at Gong Xiaoxi as he said through gritted teeth. You old fart, you really have a lot of bullshit. With your insignificant cultivation, you still want to fight against my master? Gong Xiaoxi curled his lips and did not take Ing Taichi's threat to heart. With a face full of disdain he mocked. Moreover, your cultivation has already been destroyed. You will probably die on the way back to the Tranquil Forest sect. You still want to take revenge? What a fool's dream. You. Who are you? Ing Taichi knelt on the ground with his forehead full of sweat. His face was pale, and the corner of his mouth could not stop twitching. With great difficulty, he squeezed out a few words from his throat. Thinking of the uncertain future of the Tranquil Forest sect, Ing Taichi sighed heavily. Ever since his dantian was destroyed, he had become a lot older and looked very weak. How is it? You didn't expect it, did you? Gong Xiaoxi saw that Ing Taichi, who was originally high and mighty in front of the Burning Sky sect, was now as pathetic as a stray dog. It was as refreshing as drinking ice water on a hot summer day. Gong Xiaoxi said proudly. My master is in a good mood today, and is willing to spare your life. Hurry up and go back to the Tranquil Forest sect. After saying this casually, Xiao Chun turned around gracefully and walked slowly into the Qin family with his hands behind his back. Actually, to deal with a low-level immortal cultivator like Ing Taichi, Xiao Chun only needed to smash his dantian with one punch. He did not need to use his true strength at all. What? This? How did your dantian? Sect leader Guan, who did not know the inside story, could not help but be shocked and asked stutteringly. Chapter 1379. There's no need to investigate. Before sect leader Guan could finish, Ing Taichi waved his hand and interrupted. I already know the ins and outs of this matter. The whole thing was planned by Gong Xiaoxi from the Burning Sky faction. In fact, he secretly has a master who killed Guan Weikai. Although that person is young, he is very powerful. His cultivation is at least at level 5 or 6 of the original infant stage. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cripple me. Gong Xiaoxi. At this moment, sect leader Guan wished he could swallow this name alive. He shouted angrily, this Gong guy is so despicable. Not only did he kill Guan Weikai, but he also seriously injured you. There was also a hint of sadness in Ing Taichi's eyes. Although it was not Gong Xiaoxi who did it directly, it was him who indirectly caused this result. Martial Uncle Ing, the secluded forest sect must avenge this. Sect leader Guan was so angry that his face turned red. He smashed the table beside him with his fist, and the wood chips flew everywhere. His eyes were full of hatred. He gnashed his teeth and said, if this matter is spread out, we will be laughed at by the other clans and factions in the Lucian prefecture. Avenge? Then tell me, how should we avenge this? Since you are so proactive, why don't we send you to kill Gong Xiaoxi and his master? What do you think? Ing Taichi rolled his eyes. He was speechless at sect leader Guan's blind impulse, and said impatiently. This. Sect leader Guan's words were stuck in his throat. He wanted to say that he should go, but he was not strong enough. Even if he went, he would only be beaten up and used as cannon fodder. It was better not to go out and embarrass himself. Ing Taichi was too lazy to care about the embarrassed sect leader Guan. Instead, he lowered his head and stared at the scattered sawdust on the ground. He pondered for a moment and said calmly, tell the disciples to reduce their activity range. Tell them not to go against the Burning Sky faction for the time being. Sect leader Guan was stunned. When he was about to speak, Ing Taichi added, one more thing. Find the director of the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce as soon as possible. I have something very important for him to do. Martial Uncle Ing, could it be that you want to hire experts from the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce through Director Lu to kill Gong Xiaoxi's master? Sect leader Guan frowned slightly and said disapprovingly, although this plan is feasible, the asking price of the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce is too high. If the reinforcements we send are killed by that guy again, our secluded forest sect won't be able to afford the spiritual crystals. Originally, sect leader Guan also had this idea. He planned to seek help from the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce to take revenge. However, if he wanted to suppress and kill an expert at the 5th or 6th level of the nascent soul stage, he would have to hire at least an expert at the peak of the nascent soul stage. The Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce did have cultivators of this level, but the hiring fee would easily be 10 to 20,000 spirit crystals. It was not that the Tranquil Forest sect could not afford the spiritual crystals. It was just that they had yet to find out the capabilities of the other party. If even a full nascent infant realm cultivator could not defeat the other party, and was killed instead, the compensation would be enough to make the entire Tranquil Forest sect disappear from Lucian Prefecture. I asked you to find him, so hurry up and find him. What's the point of talking so much? I have my own plans for this. Don't ask so much. Ing Taichi waved his hand impatiently. Without waiting for sect leader Guan to continue speaking, he stood up and walked into the house. Seeing Uncle Ying's silhouette disappear, sect leader Guan had no choice but to leave the secret chamber. He called for a disciple under him, and passed down the order that Uncle Ing had said not to act arbitrarily. He also instructed the disciple to pass the order to the ears of every disciple of the Tranquil Forest sect. After the disciple left, sect leader Guan returned to his own residence. He first soaked the voice-transmitting amulet in water, wanting to speak directly to Director Lu. He did not expect that after waiting for a long time, there would be no response from the other party. Sect leader Guan had no choice but to use another method. He inserted the message that Uncle Ing wanted to convey into the voice-transmitting amulet, and sent it to the other party. Then, as he waited for the reply, he tried to figure out Uncle Ying's intentions for doing so. After Ing Taichi's order was passed down, anyone could guess that the Tranquil Forest sect had suffered another setback. Originally, they had hoped that Uncle Ing would be able to turn the situation around beautifully. Unexpectedly, they had suffered a setback instead. Everyone in the Tranquil Forest sect felt very depressed and could not muster up any fighting spirit. On the other hand, the archenemy of the Burning Sky faction was the exact opposite. After receiving the latest report from the spy, all the disciples and higher-ups were extremely excited. They clapped their hands and cheered. Some disciples even deliberately went to the Tranquil Forest sect to provoke them. The disciples of the Tranquil Forest sect had received the order and did not dare to go against the Burning Sky faction. They could only swallow their anger and suffer helplessly. After such incidents happened a few times, it did not take long for the rumors to spread in the Lucian prefecture. The rumors were even more exaggerated than before. After the sect leader of the Burning Sky faction, Duan Suqing, received the news, he felt a little strange. According to what he knew, Gong Xiaoxi had only gone to the Qin family to inform them, so that they could be prepared and escape if they could. How could he cripple the experts of the Tranquil Forest sect in the blink of an eye? Unable to figure it out, Duan Suqing used the directed audio amulet to look for Gong Xiaoxi. He wanted to understand the real situation. Gong Xiaoxi did not hide anything and explained the sequence of events in detail. He said that due to fate, he got to know a very powerful exalted immortal master. According to his observation, the exalted immortal master was at least an original infant stage perfected immortal cultivator, or even higher. According to Gong Xiaoxi, this exalted immortal master not only crippled Ing Taichi's Dantian, but also helped him to break through to the original infant stage. This exalted immortal master was simply a super expert. If Duan Suqing had not shamelessly followed the exalted immortal master, he might have missed out on such a powerful person. After listening to Gong Xiaoxi's extravagant flattery, Duan Suqing was so shocked that he was almost dumbfounded. After ending the call, Duan Suqing thought for a long time. He concluded that the Xiao Chong that Gong Xiaoxi spoke of was definitely a mysterious expert hidden in the immortal cultivation world, or a disciple of some top-notch faction. As the saying goes, a great expert hides in the city. It could be for training, or it could be to avoid the struggles of the upper echelons. This mysterious expert would stay in the unknown Yinlin town and hide in the Qin family. If it was not because the disciples of the Tranquil Forest sect had coincidentally gone to find trouble with the Qin family, he would not have lent a helping hand. As a result, Gong Xiaoxi ran to the Qin family and witnessed his true abilities. Thinking up to this point, Duan Suqing decisively sent someone to summon the vice sect leader, Xian Zhaoshan, and briefly explained the situation. Then, he ordered Xian Zhaoshan to immediately go to the Qin family and invite Xiao Chun to the Burning Sky faction. Chapter 1380. Duan Suqing's purpose was very simple. Firstly, he wanted to see this expert with his own eyes. Secondly, he wanted to ask for his advice to see if he could break through again. Thirdly, he wanted to find out if he could help the Burning Sky faction. After understanding Duan Suqing's intention, Xian Zhaoshan naturally did not dare to be negligent. After coming out, he saw that it was already late. He tidied up a little and informed Gong Xiaoxi. The next morning, he left Lucian Prefecture and set off for Yinlin Town. When Xian Zhaoshan arrived at the Qin clan in Yinlin Town, the sky had just brightened. Qin Shengling was already waiting at the gate with a group of servants. Yesterday, after Gong Xiaoxi received the vice leader's notice, he immediately told Qin Shengling. Qin clan master also knew that Xian Zhaoshan must have come for deity Xiao. However, the sudden arrival of the vice leader of Lucian Prefecture's power faction was also a matter of honor for the Qin clan. Therefore, Qin Shengling had arranged a welcoming ceremony early in the morning and patiently waited for Xian Zhaoshan's arrival at the gate. Gong Xiaoxi also came with Qin Shengling. However, Xiao Chun did not follow. Although Gong Xiaoxi also told him about this yesterday, Xiao Chun was not interested in waking up early in the morning to receive a vice leader. Moreover, because of his special identity, Gong Xiaoxi and Qin Shengling could not invite him even if they wanted to. Therefore, he naturally did not show up at the gate. Vice Leader Xian, your presence really brings light to our humble Qin clan. Seeing Xian Zhaoshan coming from afar, Qin Shengling immediately greeted him, with a face full of smiles, and a loud and clear voice. Seeing the lineup at the Qin clan's gate, Xian Zhaoshan also felt quite honored. He chuckled and cupped his hands, saying, Clan Master Qin is too polite. If you had not found such a powerful expert, I'm afraid I would not have come to your residence as a guest. Speaking of which, it was thanks to you that Xiaoxi was able to successfully advance to the nascent soul stage. Vice Leader Xian is too kind. This old man is ashamed. Hearing this, Qin Shengling blushed and could only say a few words casually. In Xian Zhaoshan's heart, the Qin clan was only a small clan that was not worth mentioning. How could they have the ability to find an expert like Deity Xiao to hold down the fort? If Qin Taotian hadn't run into the immortal cultivator by chance and been inspired to follow her, he probably wouldn't have had the chance to meet an immortal cultivator of such a level in his life. If one really had to describe it, it could only be said that Qin Taotian had cultivated his good fortune for several lifetimes to be able to meet an expert like exalted immortal Xiao. Xian Zhaoshan exchanged some pleasantries with Qin Shengling, and then turned to Gong Xiaoxi and said, Xiaoxi, where is the master you mentioned? Since I'm already here, let's go meet him. Oh, master is chatting with master's wife in the living room. Vice Sect Leader Xian, follow me. Gong Xiaoxi stood to the side with his hands clasped behind his back. When he heard Xian Zhaoshan's urging, he smiled and nodded. He did not care about the etiquette at all. He turned around and led the way through the main door, swaggering toward the guest hall. Xian Zhaoshan did not say anything and hurriedly followed. Qin Shengling, who was following closely behind, was a little puzzled when he saw that. This Xian Zhaoshan was obviously a vice sect leader. Why did Gong Xiaoxi not seem to care about him at all? He actually said a few words to himself and left just like that. Could it be that his position in the Burning Sky faction was higher than that of the vice sect leader? But wasn't he just a deacon elder? Actually, Qin Shengling did not know much about the Burning Sky faction, so he did not know the reason behind it. Although Gong Xiaoxi was only an elder, his father was the Grand Elder of the Burning Sky faction. Moreover, he was a rare immortal cultivator expert in the Lucian prefecture. During the Burning Sky faction's heyday, Gong Xiaoxi's father was there to oversee the faction. Therefore, usually when Duan Suqing saw Gong Xiaoxi, he would have a warm expression, and Xian Zhaoshan would also give him some face. A son's status depended on his father's status, so naturally, Gong Xiaoxi's status was not low. Of course, what he did not know was that ever since Gong Xiaoxi's father was injured, Gong Xiaoxi had also become a lot more low-key. Today he was so arrogant because he had an even more arrogant master. Immortal Master, Vice Sect Leader Xian, whom I mentioned to you yesterday, is here now. He wants to invite you to the Burning Sky faction as a guest. What do you think? Gong Xiaoxi impatiently asked the moment he stepped into the guest hall. At this moment, Xiao Chun was chatting with Hongzhu. After hearing Gong Xiaoxi's question, he pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, I don't think I have the time to go there for the time being. I still have to stay in the Qin clan for a while before thinking about the next plan. Xiao Chun also had his own concerns. He was worried that if he went to the Burning Sky faction as a guest, if the secluded forest sect sent a few more nascent soul experts to provoke the Qin clan, Gong Xiaoxi, who had just reached the nascent soul stage, might not be able to hold up the facade. At the very least, he would be beaten up, and the lives of the Qin clan members would also be in danger. Halfway through Xiao Chen's words, Xian Zhaoshan also entered the door. He and Qin Shengling fell behind, so they did not hear the entire conversation. They only heard that Xiao Chun rejected the invitation to the Burning Sky faction. After sizing up Xiao Chun, who was sitting on the seat, Xian Zhaoshan's expression was a little surprised. He thought to himself, I wonder what relationship this young man has with that expert? To actually make a decision for him without permission, it seems like his status is not low. Could it be that he is his eldest disciple? While Xian Zhaoshan was pondering, Gong Xiaoxi had already turned around. Smiling, he spread his hands and said, Vice Sect Leader Xian, you heard everything, right? My immortal master is not free recently, so he won't be going to the Burning Sky faction. Is there anything else? If there isn't, then hurry back and report to Sect Leader Duan. Otherwise, Sect Leader will still be waiting there. What did you just say? He is your master? Xian Zhaoshan was stunned and could not help but blurt out. Only now did he realize that this young man was the very awesome immortal master that Gong Xiaoxi mentioned. Yes. What's wrong? Gong Xiaoxi looked at Xian Zhaoshan with a blank expression. He had no idea what Xian Zhaoshan was so surprised about. After Xian Zhaoshan received a definite answer from Gong Xiaoxi, he carefully sized up Xiao Chen again in disbelief. He really could not connect this young man with some perfected nascent soul top-notch cultivator. Xiaoxi, come out with me for a while. I have some questions to ask you. Xian Zhaoshan suddenly thought of another possibility. His expression changed slightly, and he said this sternly. Then he flicked his sleeves, turned around and left the guest room. Xian Zhaoshan had just stormed out when he bumped into Qin Shengling, who was about to enter the door. Xian Zhaoshan ignored him and walked away without looking back. Qin Shengling, on the other hand, was confused. He walked into the guest room with a baffled look on his face. He looked left and right, completely unaware of what had happened, and did not know how to ask. He was very embarrassed for a moment. Chapter 1381. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head and apologized to Xiao Chen helplessly before following behind Xian Zhaoshan. Xian Zhaoshan strode forward until he reached a corner, before he was stopped by Gong Xiaoxi, who caught up from behind. Vice Sect Leader Xian, what are you doing? Gong Xiaoxi's expression was a little displeased as he complained. What is it that you can't say in front of my master? Why are you acting so sneakily? Xiaoxi, have you been tricked by that kid? Xian Zhaoshan's face darkened as he asked in a low voice. He's so young. How could he be an expert cultivator? Could it be that the Tranquil Forest sect purposely set up a ruse to trick you into taking the bait? In Xian Zhaoshan's mind, an immortal cultivator who was able to reach the perfected nascent soul stage must have at least gone through dozens or hundreds of years of arduous cultivation before he could succeed. Based on his age, he should be a loyal elder. He didn't expect to see a young kid today. Gong Xiaoxi was shocked and quickly looked to his left and right. When he saw that there was no one nearby, he finally relaxed and made a shushing gesture to Xian Zhaoshan. He said in an extremely displeased tone, Vice Sect Leader Xian, how can you speak like this? Aren't you being too disrespectful to my master? What do you mean by that kid and that kid? Just because of that little. Xian Zhaoshan wanted to scold Xiao Chen when he saw Gong Xiaoxi still speaking like this. However, he was interrupted by Gong Xiaoxi halfway through his sentence. Vice Sect Leader Xian, you'd better watch your mouth. My master, Exalted Immortal Xiao, is a true expert. What do you mean by slandering him like this? Gong Xiaoxi's expression was a little gloomy, and he seemed to be on the verge of exploding. Xian Zhaoshan originally wanted to say something disrespectful, but when he saw Gong Xiaoxi's attitude, he could only swallow the profanity that he had prepared and changed his words. Anyway, no matter how I look at it, your master is only a young man around 20 years old. How is it possible that he could cultivate to such a high level in just 20 years? Unless he has cultivated some kind of technique to preserve his youthful looks. A cultivator at the peak of the nascent soul stage would never look so young. I don't know about that. Moreover, as his disciple, I won't ask about these useless things. After all, not only have I personally experienced exalted deity Zhao's strength, I have also personally witnessed him crippling that old thing with the surname Ing from the Tranquil Forest sect. If you really don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do. Gong Xiaoxi spread out his hands and said casually. To Gong Xiaoxi, he did not care at all whether or not Exalted Immortal Xiao had learned the Eternal Youth technique. So what if he was really only 20 years old? Strength was the absolute way of the king. Xian Zhaoshan was speechless when she heard Gong Xiaoxi's insistence. She opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Although Xian Zhaoshan believed that Gong Xiaoxi wouldn't lie to him, and didn't doubt what he said, Xiao Chen looked too young. It felt weird to associate him with the peak of nascent soul stage. Alright, you don't have to say this and that. Gong Xiaoxi waved his hand and didn't let Xian Zhaoshan continue speaking. He said calmly, since Exalted Deity Master has already rejected you, don't go in and make him angry. Why don't you first report the situation to sect leader Duan, and then let him make a decision? Sigh, alright. This is the only thing we can do now. Xian Zhaoshan sighed helplessly and looked left and right. After thinking for a while, he said, then I will first find a suitable place to contact the sect leader. When I have confirmed the news, I will use the directed audio amulet to inform you. Xian Zhaoshan felt that the situation was a little complicated. If he found a place to contact Duan Suqing in the Qin clan, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to explain things clearly. If he returned to the Lucian prefecture, it would be a waste of time and effort. It was better to find an inn and use the directed audio amulet to report in detail to the sect leader. Then you go. I will go back to find my exalted deity master. Gong Xiaoxi could also understand Xian Zhaoshan's thoughts and didn't try to keep him. Xian Zhaoshan gave a few simple instructions to Gong Xiaoxi and looked in the direction of the guest hall. Then, he turned around and hurriedly left the Qin clan. Seeing Gong Xiaoxi return to the guest hall alone, Qin Shengling, who was originally a little uneasy, was instantly stunned. He looked behind him for a long time, but didn't see Xian Zhaoshan's figure. He could only carefully ask, Elder Gong, why didn't that deputy sect leader Xian return with you? Did our Qin clan treat him poorly in any way and made him angry? No, he suddenly had an urgent matter to attend to, so he went out for a while. Don't worry, old clan leader Qin. He is usually very strange and doesn't act properly. He has nothing to do with your Qin clan, so please don't take it to heart. Gong Xiaoxi waved his hand carelessly and said casually, with regards to Xian Zhaoshan's departure, Gong Xiaoxi didn't seem to mind at all. Instead, he looked for Xiao Chun in high spirits and chatted about the topic of cultivation, hoping that he would be able to make some gains after breaking through to the nascent soul realm. Qin Shengling was confused as he listened. He thought to himself, what kind of show is the Burning Sky faction playing? Could it be that they failed to invite exalted deity Xiao, and Xian Zhaoshan left angrily out of humiliation and anger? Isn't that a little too arrogant? A faint smile hung on the corner of Xiao Chen's mouth. Although Xian Zhaoshan and Gong Xiaoxi deliberately walked very far away, and even lowered their voices, under his powerful divine sense, he could still hear everything clearly. After listening to the argument, Xiao Chun felt that Xian Zhaoshan was really a person with a bad character. Wasn't he just a little young? What problem could there be? He actually pulled out the trick of injuring himself to gain the confidence of others. What kind of youthful technique is this? Could it be that I went to South Korea for an injection to make adjustments to my appearance? If I really wanted to harm the Burning Sky faction, there was no need for me to create so many problems. Wouldn't it be much easier to just go and find trouble with them? However, Xiao Chun only thought about these things in his heart. He had seen this kind of situation many times, so he naturally didn't find it strange. He still chatted with Gong Xiaoxi from time to time. Xian Zhaoshan hurriedly left the Qin family and casually found an inn in Yinlin town to stay. Without any delay, he directly prepared a basin of water and soaked it in a sound-transmitting talisman, waiting for Duan Suqing's reply. Is it Zhaoshan? How did it go? Not long after, Duan Suqing's voice came out from the basin of water along with a few bubbles. Sect Master, I've already arrived at the Qin clan and met Gong Xiaoxi and the exalted deity master he mentioned, but the matter seems a little strange. Xian Zhaoshan hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to describe the matter. Should he say that the other party had a youthful technique, or should he directly say that he thought that the other party was here to trick the Burning Sky faction? Chapter 1382. What's wrong? What's wrong? Are you in trouble? Duan Suqing's voice was a bit muffled, and he sounded quite unhappy. Xian Zhaoshan took a deep breath and decided to talk about another matter first. That upper immortal refused to come and said he wanted to stay at the Qin clan for a while. Why? Duan Suqing quickly replied. How did you invite him? Did you express our burning sky sect's sincerity? Actually, Xian Zhaoshan touched his nose awkwardly and said, Actually, Gong Xiaoxi invited him. I didn't have time to speak. Didn't have time to speak? Duan Suqing's voice was a bit surprised. Could it be that this upper immortal hated burning sky sect so much that you were driven out before you even spoke? That's not it. After I entered the door, I found that something was not quite right, so I came out. Xian Zhaoshan replied helplessly. What's wrong? You've been talking for so long. Why haven't you gotten to the point? Duan Suqing's tone was a bit impatient. He felt that Xian Zhaoshan was hammering here and there, and couldn't get to the point. Xian Zhaoshan paused and still honestly said, That cultivator looked very young, like he was only about 20 years old. I think. He didn't seem to be at the level of nascent soul peak. About 20 years old. This time, Duan Suqing's voice came out after a while, but it was very calm. That's normal. You know too little about the immortal cultivation world. Some secluded sects and families have many heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and wonderful mental cultivation methods. The juniors they train are not only strong, but also very young. There's nothing strange about that. The most important thing is that they have elixirs that can keep their faces. Oh, Xian Zhaoshan didn't think of this reason. After a while he continued. I asked Gong Xiaoxi if that person had some kind of face-keeping technique, and he said he wasn't too sure. So I came to report this situation to you first. As for what needs to be done later, I'll leave it to you to decide. What? Duan Suqing turned pale with fright, and his urgent voice immediately came over. You can't be asking Gong Xiaoxi in front of that upper immortal, right? You want to kill Burning Sky Sect. No. Xian Zhaoshan was shocked. She waved her hands at the basin and explained hurriedly. I purposely dragged Gong Xiaoxi to a place far away to ask him. There was no one around, so the Supreme Immortal would never know. That's good. Duan Suqing patted his chest and heaved a long sigh of relief. In his heart, he was annoyed that this Xian Zhaoshan always took big breaths when he spoke, causing him to almost be scared out of his wits. Only then did Xian Zhaoshan realize that his actions were a little rash. Xian Zhaoshan's face turned pale when he realized that he might have offended a Supreme Immortal without realizing it. He stammered, Sect leader, what should we do next? Duan Suqing pondered for a while, and then sent the message over. In my opinion, the reason that High Immortal isn't willing to come to the Burning Heaven sect is probably because the people we invited are still too weak, and they don't like us, so they aren't willing to come. Xian Zhaoshan didn't say anything. This too weak person was still standing in front of the basin. Did he have to go over and nod his head in agreement? How about this, you wait for me in the inn. I'll prepare some gifts, and then come over personally. I'll meet up with you first, and then we'll go look for that Supreme Immortal together. Duan Suqing couldn't care less about Xian Zhaoshan's emotions. He directly made his decision and cut off the connection. After listening to Xian Zhaoshan's description, Duan Suqing didn't have any doubts because of Xiao Chen's young age. Instead, his intention to recruit him increased. That was why he decided to personally go to the Qin clan to invite Xiao Chen over. Duan Suqing's action, on one hand, was to show the Burning Heaven sect's respect for Xiao Chen. On the other hand, he hoped to rope him in. If he could really make the Supreme Immortal happy, he could take the opportunity to build a connection with the forces behind him. Then, the Burning Heaven sect wouldn't need to fight to the death with the Tranquil Forest sect anymore. The Burning Heaven sect would once again become the #1 sect in the Lucian prefecture. After the communication with Xian Zhaoshan came to an end, Duan Suqing immediately urged his disciples to prepare a few generous gifts, and then left for Yinlin town without stopping. There was no need to keep track of the time on the road. Duan Suqing reached Yinlin town at his fastest speed. After finding Xian Zhaoshan, who was staying at the inn, the two of them didn't plan to inform Gong Xiaoxi in advance. They took the gifts and went straight to the Qin clan. In the Qin clan, Gong Xiaoxi and the others had just finished their lunch. Xiao Chun was guiding him on how to cultivate more effectively, while Qin Xingling was handling some affairs in the front hall. Coincidentally, he received Duan Suqing and Xian Zhaoshan. Qin Shengling didn't dare to be negligent. After receiving the two of them properly, he immediately found a servant to inform him. Supreme Immortal Xiao, Sect Leader Duan and Vice Sect Leader Xian of the Burning Heaven Sect are here. They said they want to meet you. The servant heard that Xiao Chun was guiding Elder Gong in his cultivation, so he jogged to Gong Xiaoxi's room. After knocking on the door and getting a response, he entered the room and reported in a loud and respectful voice. Why are they here again? They don't have anything else to do, right? Running to the Qin clan all day, aren't they tired? Gong Xiaoxi had just been enlightened a little and was in the midst of cultivating. He couldn't help but frown when he heard this. It was obvious that he was very unhappy with the two of them visiting. Forget it. Since they are so sincere, then let's go and meet them. Just treat it as a meal to digest. Xiao Chun didn't have any objections. He patted Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder and walked to the guest hall. Supreme Immortal Master, wait for me. Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly got up and followed behind Xiao Chun. He was still muttering. Previously they were talking nonsense. Now that they finally know how powerful our Supreme Immortal Master is, they should quickly come and apologize, right? Xiao Chun, who was walking in front, smiled faintly and asked casually. From your tone, it seems like you don't like them very much? They are the sect leader and vice sect leader of the Burning Heaven sect. They belong to the people who hold power in the sect. Don't tell me that you, a deacon elder, can be more powerful than them? Aya, Supreme Immortal Master, it's my fault. I forgot to explain it to you before. Gong Xiaoxi raised his chin and said with a faint sense of pride. Actually, my father is the Supreme Elder of the Burning Heaven sect. He is also the most powerful existence in our sect. Although Sect Leader Duan and Vice Sect Leader Xian are in charge of the Burning Heaven sect, they have always been respectful to my father and don't dare to be disrespectful. Chapter 1383. So you? Xiao Chun looked at Gong Xiaoxi and thought to himself. No wonder when he was chatting with Xian Zhaoshan outside, his tone was not polite. This guy was a typical celestial second generation. Gong Xiaoxi scratched his head and said with an embarrassed smile. Hehe, Immortal Master's guess is correct. Due to my father, my authority is not lower than theirs. Usually, I don't have to listen to their instructions. Xiao Chun nodded his head and suddenly thought of another question. He asked, that's strange. Since your father is the Grand Supreme Elder, then he should be the one in charge of the Burning Sky faction. Why would he assign it to someone else? Exalted Master, you may not know this, but my father was distracted during his training. He did not put his heart into it, so he accidentally went berserk. Although his life was saved, his cultivation level was greatly reduced due to his injuries. So he is still recuperating in the faction. I estimate that it will take a few years for him to recover. Gong Xiaoxi explained with a bitter face. If his father did not go berserk and get injured, the Burning Sky faction would not have become the second largest faction in Lucian Prefecture, and the Secluded Forest sect would not have taken the lead. I see. Xiao Chun finally understood the ins and outs. He thought for a while and said, if there's a chance, I'll visit your father. I'll also help him heal his injuries. It'll be your reward for being a servant in the Qin family. However, the Burning Sky faction will have to find your own way to treat the illness. I don't have any spirit crystals on me. Considering that he would have to leave the Qin family sooner or later, Xiao Chun decided to pave a way out first. As long as the Burning Sky faction became the backing of the Qin family, he would be able to leave with peace of mind. Is that true? That's great. Gong Xiaoxi's eyes were filled with disbelief. He excitedly patted his chest and said, Exalted Master, if you can cure my father, no matter how expensive the heaven and earth treasures are, the Burning Sky faction is willing to pay for them all. We will definitely not let you spend any more money. I thank you on behalf of my father. Xiao Chun originally wanted to ask further about Gong Xiaoxi's father's condition, but the two of them had already walked to the living room, so he could only give up. In the guest room, Xian Zhaoshan and Qin Shengling were chatting, while a white-robed old man with white hair and a youthful complexion sat beside them. Judging from the seating arrangement of the three, and the respect the two of them showed to him. This person was undoubtedly the Burning Sky faction's sect master Duan. Seeing Xiao Chun and Gong Xiaoxi walk in, the three of them stopped chatting. Qin Xingling stood up and was about to introduce them, but the white-robed old man spoke first. Ha ha ha. This handsome young man must be Xiaoxi's master, right? Since the other party was so enthusiastic, Xiaochen couldn't be too indifferent, so he nodded slightly and said lightly, I'm Xiao Chong, may I know who this is? Sect Master Duan looked at Xiaochen calmly and secretly praised him for being a young hero. When he heard Xiaochen's question, he also generously cupped his hands and said with a smile, I'm Duan Suqing, the Burning Sky faction's sect master. This morning, Vice Sect Master Xian left without saying goodbye because he had an urgent matter to attend to. I hope Exalted Immortal Xiao won't be offended. Oh, it's not a big deal. Xiaochen smiled slightly and waved his hand, saying, May I know why Sect Master Duan has come to the Qin family this time? If you still want me to go to the Burning Sky faction as a guest, then I can only apologize in advance, because I can't leave the Qin family for the time being. I'm afraid Sect Master Duan will be disappointed. In fact, Xiaochen still had a good impression of the Burning Sky faction, and Sect Master Duan Suqing's attitude was also very sincere. However, because of Xiaochen's own concerns, he still politely refused before Duan Suqing could open his mouth to avoid causing embarrassment on both sides. Haha, that Exalted Immortal Xiao is really a straightforward person. Duan Suqing's old face turned slightly red. He didn't expect that before he had time to say his request, the other party had already opened his mouth to decline. Hearing that Duan Suqing actually admitted it, Gong Xiaoxi, who was standing to the side, was also a little surprised. He originally thought that after Xian Zhaoshan flicked his sleeves and left, this matter would be over. He didn't expect that even Sect Master Duan would personally come to invite him now. It seemed that he also attached great importance to his master. After being refused twice in a row, Xian Zhaoshan's face was a little embarrassed. Duan Suqing's expression was as usual. He only hesitated a little, then continued to ask, I wonder if it's convenient for me to know why Exalted Immortal Xiao is not willing to go to our Burning Sky faction as a guest? Sect Master Duan, since my master doesn't want to go, please don't ask for the reason. Gong Xiaoxi panicked and hurriedly opened his mouth to stop him. Xian Zhaoshan had just agreed to help treat his father's illness. If he was angry and refused to go just because of a few words from you, wouldn't that be a great loss? It doesn't matter. Since Sect Master Duan wants to know, there's no harm in a simple explanation. Xiaochen didn't care and said what was in his heart. It's like this. A few days ago, an old fellow from the secluded forest sect came to the Qin family to provoke them, and I crippled him. Because I didn't kill him directly, I let him go, so I'm worried that their sect will send more experts to seek revenge. So that's how it is. Duan Suqing suddenly came to a realization. He felt slightly comforted and blurted out, I thought Exalted Immortal Xiao was dissatisfied with our Burning Sky faction. So it turns out that you're worried that the secluded forest sect will seek revenge. Sect Master Duan, you've misunderstood. Xiaochen pointed at Gong Xiaoxi and smiled faintly. Although Gong Xiaoxi is holding down the fort at the Qin clan, he has just broken through to the nascent soul stage. What if the enemy attacks after I leave? If Gong Xiaoxi isn't strong enough and can't defeat them, won't he be causing trouble for the Qin clan? So, about going to the Burning Sky faction, let's talk about it later. Exalted Immortal Xiao, you worry too much. After understanding the inside story, Duan Suqing completely relaxed. He couldn't help but burst into laughter and said brightly, You don't have to worry about this. The secluded forest sect's strength is similar to our Burning Sky faction. Ing Taichi is already the most powerful person in their sect. Now that that old thing has been crippled by you, they won't have any ability to take revenge. Oh, is that true? Xiaochen was slightly stunned. He didn't expect the secluded forest sect to be so weak. They were too useless, weren't they? The most powerful person in the sect was only at the 3rd level of the original infant stage. If he had known this earlier, he would have gone straight to their door and wiped them out. He wouldn't have wasted so many days. Seeing Xiao Chen's shocked expression, Duan Suqing stroked his white beard and said with a faint smile, "Moreover, the secluded forest sect now thinks that the whole thing was planned by our Burning Sky faction. So if they want to take revenge, they will take revenge on us. They won't involve the Qin family." Chapter 1384. Everyone present was smart, and they understood Duan Suqing's intention after thinking for a while. With Gong Xiaoxi, the person with real power in the Burning Sky sect, taking the lead and calling Xiao Chen Exalted Immortal Master, in addition to the long-standing grievances between the two sects, Ing Taichi naturally pushed this case onto the Burning Sky sect. Looking back, wasn't the Gold Core expert that the Zhao clan sent to deal with the Qin clan also from the secluded forest sect? Now, it had also become the evidence of the Burning Sky sect's vendetta. After Qin Shengling understood the reason, his face turned pale. Wasn't this just finding trouble for the Burning Sky sect? The Qin clan was just a small clan in a small town. The previous incidents were all coincidental. If such a big basin of dirty water was poured onto the Burning Sky sect, wouldn't the Burning Sky sect tear him apart? Don't worry, Patriarch Qin. We, the Burning Sky faction, originally had a grudge with the secluded forest sect. Even if you put this matter on our heads, we won't care about anything. Duan Suqing turned his head and saw Qin Shengling's pale face. He shook his head, smiled, and comforted him. Duan Suqing shook his head and comforted Qin Shengling with a smile. "Don't worry, Qin clan leader. Our Burning Sky sect and the secluded forest sect have always been at odds. Even if you push this matter onto us, we won't care about it." Now that a treasure like Exalted Immortal Xiao had fallen in front of him, who would care whether the Qin clan or the Burning Sky sect was the scapegoat? If he could bring Xiaochang back to the sect, Duan Suqing could not wait to thank Qin Shengling a few more times. Then I will thank sect leader Duan for his understanding. Qin Shengling heaved a sigh of relief, and his expression eased up a lot. He turned his head and said to Xiao Chen, "Since the Qin clan has nothing to worry about, then Exalted Immortal Xiao can rest assured and go to the Burning Sky sect to play for a few days. I have Elder Gong here, so there will definitely be no problem. In that case, I can't reject sect leader Duan's good intentions anymore. I will go to your sect for a visit." Without any worries in his heart, Xiao Chen readily agreed. Although Xiao Chen couldn't leave previously because he was worried about the Qin clan, in his heart, he was still quite willing to go to the Burning Sky sect as a guest. It wasn't because of the sect master's invitation, but because Xiao Chen had his own plans. According to Xiao Chen's conjecture, the Burning Sky faction's influence in the Lucian prefecture was not small. Currently, the Qin clan's search was fruitless. If he went to the Burning Sky faction and asked them to send people to search around, the search area would be larger, and the search power would be stronger. Perhaps, they would be able to find the whereabouts of Cheng Minjing and the others. As for treating Gong Xiaoxi's father, although Xiao Chen wasn't very confident, he wasn't worried. If he couldn't do it himself, he could ask the Elder Heaven Ancestor. He would definitely know how to solve it. Great! Burning Sky sect sincerely welcomes Upper Immortal Zhao's presence. Duan Suqing said repeatedly. He and Xian Zhaoshan looked at each other, their eyes filled with unconcealable joy. Xiao Chen stretched, turned to Gong Xiaoxi and said, "Disciple, I'll leave the Qin clan to you. If you encounter any experts that you can't defeat, don't force yourself. Send a message to Sect Master Duan, and I'll come back in a minute to kill them." "No problem. Upper Immortal Master, don't worry and go have fun. Leave this place to me," Gong Xiaoxi promised, patting his chest. He naturally hoped that Xiao Chen could go to the Burning Sky faction. In this way, not only would there be hope for his father's injury to recover, but it would also improve the faction's prestige. It was simply killing two birds with one stone. Because it was late that day, Xiao Chen didn't want to travel at night with Hongzhu, so he arranged for everyone to stay in the Qin clan for the night. It was rare for the Qin clan to welcome so many upper immortals, so Qin Shengling naturally did his best to arrange the banquet and the accommodation. The guests and the host were all happy, and the atmosphere was very warm. The next morning, Sect Master Duan and Deputy Sect Master Xian took Xiaochun and Hongzhu with them and set off for Lucian Prefecture. Because Hongzhu's strength wasn't enough to run at high speed for a long time, the speed at which they returned was much slower than when Duan Suqing and the others came. After a long journey of several hours, Xiaochun and the others finally arrived at the Burning Sky faction in the eastern suburbs of Lucian Prefecture. Duan Suqing had already made the arrangements through a sound-transmitting talisman the night before. Therefore, when Xiaochun and the others arrived in front of the faction, all the disciples and upper echelons of the Burning Sky faction were already gathered outside the main entrance in an orderly manner, solemnly welcoming the arrival of Xiaochun. It was evident that they attached great importance to this upper immortal. Although Xiaochun hadn't experienced such a spectacle, he wasn't afraid. He simply said a few words at the main entrance of the faction, which attracted bursts of laughter. There were also many young female disciples, who directly ignored Hongzhu's existence, and brazenly threw flirtatious glances at Xiaochun. After Xiaochun's speech came to an end, Duan Suqing led Xiaochun and Hongzhu into the Burning Sky faction, chatting cheerfully and wittily. After settling down their accommodations, Duan Suqing specially booked the most high-class restaurant in Lucian Prefecture and held an extremely grand banquet to welcome the arrival of Xiaochun and Hongzhu. This time Duan Suqing spent a great deal of capital. He specially sent out invitations to many reputable clans and merchants in Lucian Prefecture, and arranged for them to eat banquets for 3 consecutive days, just to announce the arrival of the upper immortal. He also faintly ridiculed the silent Tranquil Forest sect. As the crowd ate and drank to their heart's content, they naturally conversed with each other and expressed their own opinions. The opinion that the Tranquil Forest sect was on the verge of collapse quickly spread. Everyone unanimously agreed that from now on, Lucian Prefecture would belong to the Burning Sky faction. There were people who were proud, and naturally, there were people who were disappointed. At this moment, the Burning Sky faction's morale was soaring, and its reputation was illustrious. At the same time, the spies that the Tranquil Forest sect had planted in the Burning Sky faction had naturally sent the news of the upper immortal Zhao's arrival back to the Tranquil Forest sect, who had been keeping a low profile. After receiving the news, sect leader Guan could not help but be furious. He smashed the teacup in his hand fiercely. This piece of news made him even more certain that this matter was caused by the Burning Sky faction from the very beginning. Motherf *Ker. That surname Duan is simply too arrogant. Isn't he openly making things difficult for the Tranquil Forest sect? Who gave him such great courage? In the conference hall of the Tranquil Forest sect leader Guan was slamming the table with an ashen face and cursing loudly. Sitting on the seat above sect leader Guan was a dispirited Ing Taichi. At this moment, he also sighed helplessly and did not speak. The few chairs behind him were a group of elders from the Tranquil Forest sect. Hearing the roar of sect leader Guan, their expressions were solemn. They looked at each other and did not dare to express any opinions. Similarly, they chose to remain silent. If Ing Taichi was still at his peak, and his cultivation had not been destroyed, then the Tranquil Forest sect could immediately retaliate. However, at present the strongest person had already been defeated. Therefore, the Burning Sky faction was actually not wrong in saying that their strength had indeed far surpassed that of the Tranquil Forest sect. Chapter 1385. In such a situation, the elders of the secluded forest sect could only lower their heads, lest they say something they shouldn't, and get themselves into trouble. Sect leader Guan looked at the group of elders who were originally in high spirits, but now hung their heads like frosted eggplants. And he couldn't help but feel angry. Just as he was about to open his mouth to scold them again, Ing Taichi waved his hand and said, "Forget it. No matter how hard you scold them, it won't help anything. If word of it gets out, the Burning Sky faction will only laugh at you. Save your energy." "Martial uncle, I know you're right. I just feel uncomfortable holding my breath." Sect leader Guan sat down dispiritedly, and his face turned gloomy. "Cough cough, there's nothing I can do." Ing Taichi coughed a few times, and asked with difficulty while breathing heavily, "I'm afraid I can't hold on for much longer. Don't worry about the Burning Sky sect for now. I asked you to contact Director Liu of the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce. Did he reply?" Ever since Ying Taichi's dantian had been destroyed by Xiao Chun, he felt that his body was deteriorating day by day. Although it was said that immortal cultivators had a very long lifespan, and it was not easy for them to get sick, and their internal organs aged very slowly, that was all due to the effect of essence. Once the dantian was destroyed, the cultivation of the cultivator would be completely abolished, and they would not be able to gather vitality in their body again. Therefore, there was not much difference between them and ordinary people, and they would age and get sick. "Marshal Uncling, I wanted to ask you before, why are you looking for Director Liu?" Sect leader Guan frowned and couldn't help but ask. Xiao Guan, do you still remember my master?" Ying Taichi lowered his head and thought for a while, then said calmly, "Many years ago, he left the secluded forest sect and traveled the world to train. He only contacted our sect through letters in the first few years, and then there was no news from him. I thought that since the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce is so powerful, we might as well ask them to help us find my master." There were actually two reasons why Ying Taichi wanted to find his master. Firstly, if he could appear, he would definitely be able to beat the crap out of Xiao Chong, who had appeared out of nowhere. Secondly, it was related to himself. If he could find his master, maybe his damaged dantian could be healed. But the immortal cultivation world is so big. He has been gone for so many years, and there is no news at all. No matter how powerful the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce is, they may not be able to find him, right? Sect leader Guan shook his head in disagreement. In fact, sect leader Guan had something else to say. Perhaps that old man had already died in some corner of the world of cultivators. If that was the case, even the gods of the highest firmament would not be able to find him. "Little Guan, what happened to you?" Ying Taichi's face darkened and he said seriously, "How can we know if we don't try? Now that our tranquil forest sect has fallen to such a state, if we don't think of a way to save ourselves, we'll soon become an unknown small sect. Why are you still making excuses? What are you thinking? It's not that I don't want to find him. It's just that the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce has gone too far." Sect leader Guan's anger flared up again when he mentioned this matter. He slammed the table and roared. Seeing that the few elders and Marshal Uncle Ying were looking at him in surprise, sect leader Guan said angrily, "That kid was also invited to the banquet by the Burning Sky faction. The point is that not only did he go to eat their meal, he even criticized me after eating." "Criticized you?" Ying Taichi frowned slightly. He could not be bothered to mention his own purpose. He changed the topic and asked, "He went to eat his meal. We didn't stop him. Why would he criticize you?" "It's because of the previous matter." Sect leader Guan complained bitterly. He said that it was because of our fight with the Burning Sky faction that indirectly caused Guan Weicai's death, causing the success rate of cooperation with the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to be lowered. Our reputation was also damaged because of this. He even said that he wanted to blacklist us in the industry. As it turned out, after Lu Huaishui finished attending the Burning Sky faction's banquet, he thought that he finally understood the truth of the entire matter. After returning, he first wrote a report to his superiors, explaining the ins and outs of the matter. In the report, Lu Huaishui determined that Guan Weicai was actually a victim of the personal grudge between the Burning Sky faction and the Tranquil Forest sect, and that Xiao Chun was also the force behind the Burning Sky faction's invitation. The Zhao family just happened to have an agreement with the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce and invited Guan Weicai to be their worshipper. After the report was submitted, it didn't take long for the instructions from the higher-ups to come down. Lu Huaishui immediately contacted sect leader Guan and conveyed the instructions to the secluded forest sect, telling them that Guan Weicai's death was due to a private fight between the two sects, and that the Burning Sky sect had secretly invited an expert to kill him. The Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce would not be responsible for any breach of contract. At the same time, Lu Huaishui also pointed out that the Tranquil Forest sect might have violated one of the terms in the contract between the two parties and was suspected of swindling spirit crystals. After that, the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce would conduct a further investigation. If the Tranquil Forest sect was indeed suspected of violating the rules and actively swindling spirit crystals, then the Chamber of Commerce would recover the 10,000 spirit crystals previously given and reserve the right to pursue legal responsibility. I didn't expect it to be like this. A haze flashed across Ing Taichi's eyes. Recently, there had been too much bad news, and he felt a little mentally and physically exhausted. Sect leader Guan nodded helplessly and explained, "Now that Director Lu blamed the grudge between us and the Tranquil Forest sect for Guan Weicai's death, not only did he speak harshly to our sect, he might even want to take back the 10,000 spirit crystals. That's why I feel that. I'm afraid it's not suitable for the Chamber of Commerce to help us find people anymore. It doesn't matter. If he wants those spirit crystals back, then we'll just give them to him." Ing Taichi thought for a while and made a decision. He said resolutely, "As long as the Chamber of Commerce can find my master, everything will be easy to solve, and we can even give him another 10,000 spirit crystals. At worst, I'll let my master kill that Xiao Chang, and then let the Burning Sky faction compensate us for all our losses." Ing Taichi didn't care about the spirit crystals at all. From his point of view, the most important thing now was to find his master, and then let him find a way to repair his dantian, so that he could become an immortal cultivator again. Sect leader Guan frowned deeply, and after a moment of silence he finally agreed. "Looks like we can only do this now. Then I'll go and contact Director Lu again. Although that fellow isn't very honest, he's still trustworthy when doing business, and the key thing is that he's a guy who only cares about profits. As long as we're willing to spend more spirit crystals, he'll definitely be willing to let the Chamber of Commerce help us find your master." Chapter 1386. Let's do that. Ing Taichi nodded his head and cautiously reminded, "No matter what condition he proposes, you must agree to it immediately and unconditionally. As long as he can find my master, he will agree to any condition. Now the Secluded Forest sect can only rely on finding my master to regain their position as the top sect in Lucian Prefecture." After sect leader Guan nodded in agreement, Ing Taichi gave a few instructions to the other elders, telling them to appease the disciples and wait for the news from the Chamber of Commerce of Immortal Cultivators. After everything was arranged, he stood up and returned to his room to rest. The 3-day banquet finally ended in a lively atmosphere. Xiao Chun had a rough understanding of the Burning Sky faction's situation. The Burning Sky faction and the Secluded Forest sect had existed in the Lucian Prefecture for many years, and their feud had been going on for a long time. When the Secluded Forest sect's Ing Taichi's teacher was still around, the Burning Sky faction did not have any particularly powerful talents. Hence, they had been suppressed by the Secluded Forest sect. After that, Ing Taichi's master left the faction to wander. The Secluded Forest sect's strength immediately declined. In addition, a cultivation expert appeared in the Burning Sky faction. It was Gong Xiaoxi's father, Gong Ruidong. Hence, the Burning Sky faction became the top sect in Lucian Prefecture. However, good times did not last long. Gong Ruidong accidentally went berserk during his cultivation and was seriously injured. He had no choice but to retreat to recuperate. The Secluded Forest sect immediately overtook its strength. Ing Taichi, who was initially suppressed, suddenly appeared and became the top expert of the Secluded Forest sect. The strength of the two factions fluctuated, and neither was convinced of the other. Usually there would be conflicts. However, ever since Gong Ruidong from the Burning Sky faction was injured and went into seclusion, the Secluded Forest sect had the upper hand in most of the battles. Hence, the people of Lucian Prefecture were more inclined to believe that the Secluded Forest sect was the top sect in the prefecture. However, after a few days of banquets, everyone knew that Fan Forest sect had sent Immortal Xiao, who easily defeated Ing Taichi. Hence, the Burning Sky faction quietly returned to its original position as the top sect. After the 3 days of banquets, the various clans and merchants in the Lucian prefecture realized that the secluded forest sect had not made any moves. Instantly, they had their own ideas and started to re-evaluate the situation. Many of them who were quick to act had even approached the Burning Sky faction to express their goodwill, preparing to join the Burning Sky faction. After all, everyone hoped that they could have a powerful backer. Even though the Burning Sky faction had been so arrogant these few days, the secluded forest sect was still able to keep their composure. According to past experience, it was not that they disdained to make a move, but that their strength had indeed been greatly damaged, and they were no longer able to suppress the Burning Sky faction. One day after the banquet, Xiao Chun had nothing to do, so he asked someone to find Duan Suqing, intending to have him take him to see Gong Ruidong's injury. Sect leader Duan, I heard that Gong Xiaoxi's father suffered from qi deviation and was injured. He has been recuperating in seclusion and hasn't recovered for a long time, right? Xiao Chun asked when he saw Duan Suqing enter the room. Yes, because at that time, his qi deviation was more serious, and it wasn't easy to save his life. Therefore, he has been recuperating step by step, and hasn't fully recovered yet. Duan Suqing nodded and answered honestly, Oh, since Gong Xiaoxi is willing to give me face, and serve as a high priest in the Qing clan without any fees, then I can't be too at ease. Xiao Chun smiled slightly and said, I'll do a little repayment on behalf of the Qing clan, and go treat his father's injury. I wonder if it's convenient for you to bring me over and introduce me to him? Of course. I can't ask for more. Duan Suqing's eyes brightened. How was this a little repayment? It was simply a great thing. Then you lead the way. We'll go and take a look now. Xiao Chun didn't delay and directly walked out of the room. Duan Suqing hurriedly ran in front of him to lead the way. I heard from Xiaoxi that exalted immortal Zhao's objective in going to Swallow Forest Town seems to be to look for his missing companions? On the way to Gong Ruidong's place of seclusion, Duan Suqing, who was thinking of finding an opportunity to get close to immortal Zhao, asked with a smile. Yes. Unfortunately, the Qing clan has been searching for a long time, but there's still no news, Xiao Chun replied. He thought to himself, this is great. I don't need to say anything, and you've taken the initiative to mention it. Duan Suqing couldn't wait to do Xiao Chun a favor, so he immediately followed up. If you don't mind, I can also ask my subordinates from the Burning Sky faction to help you inquire around. It can also be considered as a little bit of help. Xiao Chun nodded calmly and said casually, Oh, that's fine too. After I cure Gong Ruidong's illness, I'll tell you the relevant information about my companions. Duan Suqing nodded repeatedly, and was about to say a few words of flattery when Xiao Chun added, But according to my guess, it's very likely that they are not in Lucian prefecture. Otherwise, with the liveliness of the banquet these days, they would definitely come after hearing the noise. So I guess they may have wandered to a small town nearby. I hope sect leader Duan can increase the search efforts and expand the scope of the search. Haha, exalted immortal Zhao's matter is our Burning Sky faction's matter. Even if you don't say it, I will definitely do so. Duan Suqing immediately patted his chest and guaranteed Xiao Chun. Then I'll thank sect leader Duan first. There's strength in numbers. I hope your search will be fruitful. Xiao Chun smiled and thanked him, finally feeling a little relieved. Exalted immortal Xiao is too polite. Duan Suqing thought for a moment and asked tentatively, But exalted immortal Xiao, there's actually a problem that I haven't figured out. Since your companions were inadvertently separated from you, why didn't they use the message transmitting talisman to contact you? They should be able to contact you faster this way. It's like this. Previously, when we came out to train, we accidentally encountered a few powerful cultivators from an enemy sect, and then we started fighting. Xiao Chen's expression did not change as he explained. Although I killed all of them in the chaotic battle, I accidentally got separated from my companions. Their luggage and voice transmission talismans are with me, which is why I couldn't contact them. In order not to expose his origin, Xiao Chen could only casually bluff. He was afraid that Duan Suqing would not believe him, so he added, "In order to train ourselves, we didn't bring any spirit crystals with us. I don't think there's anywhere to buy message-transmitting talismans, so..." Actually, Xiao Chen was thinking too much. After Duan Suqing heard the first part of his words, the corner of his mouth was already twitching. He was so shocked that he didn't care to listen to the second part of the explanation. In Duan Suqing's eyes, Exalted Immortal Zhao's cultivation was already incomparably heaven-defying. Even if he turned the entire Lucian County upside down, he probably wouldn't be able to find one. Chapter 1387. Most importantly, Exalted Immortal Zhao was actually able to kill all of them. Just how strong was the sect behind him? Exalted Immortal Zhao, which sect did you and your companion come from? Duan Suqing took a deep breath and asked carefully, "As for which sect I am from, it's not convenient for me to tell you." Seeing that Duan Suqing had been successfully intimidated by him and was trembling with fear, Xiao Chen found it a little funny. However, his expression did not change. He said indifferently, "I believe that since you have been the sect leader for so long, you should know the rules better than me. There are some things that are not good for you to know too much." Yes. It's all my fault for talking too much. Please don't take offense, Exalted Deity Xiao. Duan Suqing shuddered and quickly squeezed out a smile, afraid that Exalted Immortal Zhao would be dissatisfied with him. Xiao Chen waved his hand and did not speak again. Fortunately, they had arrived at the place. Duan Suqing quickly stepped forward and gently knocked on the door. "Who is it?" A low and slightly hoarse male voice came from behind the door. "Reporting to Grand Supreme Elder, I'm Duan Suqing. I've brought a guest to see you." Duan Suqing reported respectfully. "Come in." After a while, a tired voice sounded from behind the door. After getting a response, Duan Suqing turned to Xiao Chen and said, "Immortal Xiao, the highest elder is doing closed-door training inside. Please come with me." Pushing open the door and following Duan Suqing into the room, Xiao Chen saw a haggard old man at first glance. At this time, the old man was sitting on the bed with his eyes closed and seemed to be quietly adjusting his breathing. This person should be Gong Xiaoxi's father, Gong Ruidong. His facial features were somewhat similar to Gong Xiaoxi's, but there was a kind of dispirited and sickly expression between his brows. His complexion was also somewhat pale, without any color of blood. After both of them entered the room, Gong Ruidong slowly exhaled and opened her eyes. She looked at Xiao Chen, and then turned to look at Duan Suqing. She asked seriously, "What's going on?" Reporting to Grand Elder, "This is Xiaoxi's newly acknowledged master, Xiao Chang. This time, he was specially invited to the Burning Sky faction as a guest." Duan Suqing bowed and very respectfully introduced Xiao Chen. Gong Ruidong sized up Xiao Chen again. His expression was even more gloomy, and his tone was somewhat unfriendly. "And then, it's like this. This time we invited Exalted Immortal Zhao to come. On one hand, we hope that he can give some pointers to the disciples in the sect. On the other hand, we want to treat your injuries and let you recover as soon as possible." Only then did Duan Suqing explain the purpose of his visit. "No need." Just as Duan Suqing's voice fell, Gong Ruidong's thick eyebrows furrowed into a ball, and she immediately refused. "How could I not know what's going on with my own injuries?" But Duan Suqing was stunned. He still wanted to say a few words. Gong Ruidong waved his hand, pointed at Xiao Chen, looked at Duan Suqing, and said in a deep voice, "Besides, you're already an expert of the nascent soul stage, right? Even you can't heal my injuries. So where did this little brat come from? You're really something. You were actually deceived by a little brat. Could it be that he drugged you?" Gong Ruidong didn't believe that Xiao Chen could cure him. The Burning Sky faction had already invited countless famous doctors in the Lucian prefecture to diagnose his injuries. He didn't know how many treasures and spirit crystals he had spent, but what was the result? They were all helpless. This brat looked so young. What could he do? He must be a swindler. But he didn't expect Duan Suqing to be deceived at such an old age. Looking at Gong Ruidong's righteous expression, Xiaochen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head, squinted at him, and teased. So you know so much. Then why don't you go to heaven? Originally, he wanted to treat his father's injuries for Gong Xiaoxi's sake. After all, it was just a small effort. He didn't expect that this person not only didn't care about it, but also questioned him. Hearing Xiaochen's angry and teasing words, Duan Suqing's face stiffened. He couldn't afford to offend these two people. Helplessly, he could only say to Gong Ruidong with a bitter face, "This, Grand Supreme Elder, please listen to my explanation. Although this exalted immortal Xiao looks very young, his medical skills are quite exquisite. Moreover, he also helped Elder Xiaoxi." Unfortunately, before Duan Suqing could explain what Xiaochen had done, he was ruthlessly interrupted by Gong Ruidong again. "Say no more. In short, I will never let him treat my injuries. You can leave. I'm going to continue my closed-door training." Gong Ruidong waved his hand decisively. He didn't want to say anything more. He closed his eyes and adjusted his qi circulation again. In fact, Gong Ruidong couldn't be blamed for being too arbitrary. Since he was injured, he had been in closed-door training all year round. He didn't know anything about what had happened in the outside world. As the pillar of the sect, he was usually arrogant. Therefore, at first glance, he concluded that a young boy like Xiaochen didn't have any ability. Tut-tut, it seems that this person has been in closed-door training for too long. His mind is a little muddled. Xiaochen stretched and moved his muscles and bones. Then he said lightly, "Since he doesn't want me to treat him, there's no need for me to stay any longer. I'll leave first. When he wakes up, I'll come back." After he finished speaking, Xiaochen lifted his feet and left the room. He didn't want to argue with such an old man. Moreover, this guy's thinking was too stubborn. It was useless to continue talking. Look, I was right. He ran away with a guilty conscience. Looking at the back of Xiaochen, who turned and left, Gong Ruidong deliberately raised his voice and said loudly, "In the future, don't let this kind of swindler in again. Otherwise, people will think that our Burning Sky faction is easy to cheat. If it weren't for the fact that I'm paralyzed and can't move, I would have slapped him away." At this time, Xiaochen hadn't gone far. Moreover, Gong Ruidong's voice was very loud. Naturally, he heard his sarcastic and abusive remarks. However, Xiaochen didn't intend to lower himself to his level. Anyway, he was the one who proposed to help treat the illness. Since the other party refused to accept it, there was no need to say more. Grand Elder, you can't say that." Duan Suqing didn't have time to stop Immortal Xiao. As soon as he turned around, he heard Gong Ruidong say such humiliating words. Cold sweat suddenly flowed down his back. Duan Suqing couldn't help but look back at Xiaochen, who was gradually getting further and further away. He found that he wasn't angry because of this, and was still walking leisurely with his hands behind his back. Only then did he quietly let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 1388. Why can't I say that? Gong Ruidong glared at him and cursed angrily. This is the Burning Sky faction. It's not a gathering place for swindlers. You're really blinded by lard. And you still want to speak up for that immature brat. Duan Suqing tried his best to explain. Grand Elder, you don't know the situation, but Immortal Xiao helped Elder Xiaoxi to break through to the nascent soul stage not long ago. And he can be considered as a great benefactor of our Burning Sky faction. Xiaoxi has been in the Gold Core Peak stage for so long, and he's already about to break through to the nascent soul stage. He doesn't need that brat's help at all. Gong Ruidong snorted coldly from his nostrils, frowned, and curled his lips. I think he's purely here to deceive people. But that Immortal Xiao crippled old Ing of the Tranquil Forest sect. That Ing Taichi has already reached the nascent soul stage level 3, Duan Suqing became more and more powerless as he tried to defend himself. Did you see him cripple old Ing with your own eyes? Gong Ruidong didn't wait for Duan Suqing to finish his words, and asked with a sneer. I didn't see it. Duan Suqing choked, and could only shake his head honestly, thinking. Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, Gong Xiaoxi wouldn't lie, right? How could the Grand Elder not even believe his own son's words? Isn't that it? Do you believe in hearsay? Sure enough, Gong Ruidong still wasn't convinced, and with an expression of knowing that he was a liar, he loudly rebuked. Maybe the Tranquil Forest sect deliberately made a show to deceive you, so that they could send that brat to the Burning Sky faction, and use the opportunity of treating my illness to harm me. You're really getting more and more muddle-headed. Staring at Duan Suqing, whose face was alternating between red and white, Gong Ruidong's heart was very dissatisfied, and he secretly wondered if it was time for someone else to be the sect leader. This guy was too unreliable, and he fell for such a clumsy trick. No, I heard it from Xiaoxi. He also said. Duan Suqing wanted to explain in detail, but before he finished, Gong Ruidong said impatiently, "Don't talk about it anymore. Don't mention it again. Hurry up and go do your own things. As for that Xiao guy, find a way to get him out as soon as possible. I don't want to see him again." All right. The corner of Duan Suqing's mouth twitched. Duan Suqing helplessly and looked at Gong. Gong Ruidong didn't want to talk anymore. After leaving Gong Ruidong's room, Duan Suqing immediately contacted Gong Xiaoxi with a voice-transmitting talisman and told him the whole thing. Gong Xiaoxi's Rua. Ti Gong. Ti Gong's rat heat ti. Ti Gong Gong ti. Ti. Ti Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but jump in fright when he found out that his father was very disrespectful to exalted immortal Xiao, determined that he was a swindler, and even wanted to chase him away. He thought to himself, "My dear father, you're going to write off all of your son's contributions." Gong Xiaoxi, who was burning with anxiety, didn't even bother to pack his luggage. He immediately ran to the study room and gave a few simple instructions to Qin Shengling. Then, he left the Qin clan and rushed towards the Burning Sky faction without stopping. Fortunately, Gong Xiaoxi had just broken through to the nascent soul stage, and his body was full of vitality. Running at full speed, he had already arrived at the Burning Sky sect when the sky turned dark. After entering the sect, Gong Xiaoxi asked about Xiao Chen's residence. He first ran to apologize to Xiao Chen, and then hurried to the place where Gong Ruidong was in seclusion. At this time, Gong Ruidong had just finished his dinner, and several disciples were helping him clean up the dishes. Seeing Gong Xiaoxi directly push the door open with a face full of anger, the disciples did not dare to say anything, and hurriedly cleaned up the things and left. Why are you here?" Gong Ruidong was about to adjust his breathing when he saw Gong Xiaoxi suddenly appear. He couldn't help but ask in surprise. Gong Xiaoxi strode to Gong Ruidong's bed and looked down at his father, who was half paralyzed. He said angrily, "Father, how can you be so rude to Xiao Chen? I finally met such an awesome person, and racked my brains to invite him to our sect as a guest. You actually want to chase him away and call him a liar? Brat, how can you talk to your father like that?" Gong Ruidong didn't expect Gong Xiaoxi to get angry at him the moment he came in. He was a little angry and scolded. "That brat is a liar. I've never seen such a young expert. He said he could help me heal my injuries. I don't believe it." "Father, are you stupid?" Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but roll his eyes. With a pained expression, he said, "Exalted Immortal Xiao is a genuine cultivator expert. His strength is unfathomable. He can destroy the Burning Sky faction with a flick of his finger." "What nonsense are you talking about? That yellow-haired brat is an expert? I think you've been fooled." Gong Ruidong saw that his son was still talking nonsense. He angrily slammed the table and scolded, "How can Xiao Chen be a liar? I saw him cripple Olding with my own eyes." Gong Xiaoxi was anxious and argued with his father. "You're so stupid. How do you know he's not putting on a show for you?" Gong Ruidong still didn't believe it. He glanced at Gong Xiaoxi and said, "Of course he's not putting on a show. He killed Guan Weikai from the Tranquil Forest sect before Olding went to him. If he was putting on a show, he didn't have to kill his own people, right?" Gong Xiaoxi shouted angrily, "Guan Weikai? You mean the relative of the sect leader of the Tranquil Forest sect? Is it a distant cousin or someone else?" Gong Ruidong frowned and tried to recall. He seemed to have heard of this name. "That's him." Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly nodded and explained, "Guan Weicai's strength is about level 6 or 7 of the Golden Core stage. as he was hired by a merchant group to work in Yinlin town. He offended the Qin family for some reason, and was killed by exalted deity Xiao. That's why old Manning came out to seek an explanation. Gong Ruidong pondered for a while. If Guan Weikai was really killed, the possibility of it being a disguise was relatively small. After all, he was the relative of the sect leader. To put on such a big show in order to infiltrate the Burning Sky sect, the price seemed a little high. Then, when Guan Weikai was killed, were you there? Did you see it with your own eyes? After thinking for a long time, Gong Ruidong still had some doubts about the young man. I wasn't there when he died, but when Olding went to ask for an explanation, I was there. Gong Xiaoxi stomped his feet. He shouted angrily. Chapter 1389. Gong Xiaoxi was already helpless against this father of his, so he simply confessed everything. My scarlet flame pearl was destroyed by that old Ying's ice crystal. If it wasn't for exalted immortal Xiao blocking the fatal blow for me, I wouldn't be able to stand here and talk to you today. As Gong Xiaoxi spoke, he paced around the room like an impatient lion. He wanted to crack open his father's head to see what it was made of. Are you serious? That guy is that powerful? Gong Ruidong was still skeptical. That Xiao Chang looked like he was only in his teens or 20s. How could he cripple Ing Taichi, who was in the original infant stage? It's true. Everything I said is true. Gong Xiaoxi was completely anxious. He directly revealed his original infant stage level 1 cultivation and said loudly, Father, look carefully. I have been in the golden core stage for so many years. If not for exalted deity Zhao's help, I definitely wouldn't have been able to break through to the original infant stage so easily. Weren't you already about to break through? Maybe a certain acupoint in your body suddenly opened up, and you naturally broke through? It might not have been because of that guy's help that you succeeded. Gong Ruidong pouted and retorted with some dissatisfaction. His son was good at everything else, but he was too unconfident. Father, I really have to give it to you. Gong Xiaoxi almost blurted out a vulgar word. He held it in with great difficulty and explained weakly. You don't know the situation outside. Right now, the entire Lucian prefecture knows that the secluded forest sect has been defeated by us. The Burning Sky faction has become the #1 faction not only in name, but also in reality. Many merchants and families have come to us to discuss cooperation, but the other party can only hide like turtles. Do you think they are acting? Exalted deity Xiao is the benefactor of our Burning Sky faction. Gong Xiaoxi was already completely speechless at his stubborn father. Although Gong Ruidong had not been in contact with the outside world for a long time, after he went into seclusion to recuperate, it shouldn't be to the extent that his brain was fried, right? How could he so casually come to a conclusion? Seeing that Gong Xiaoxi was about to go crazy, Gong Ruidong finally didn't say anything. Others could lie to her, but her son wouldn't casually lie, right? If the Burning Sky faction really became the #1 faction in the Lucian prefecture, it would mean that a lot of resources would be tilted towards them. The entire faction would no longer be suppressed, and their abilities would become more and more prosperous with each passing day. If they were to put on an act, the losses would be too great, and there was no need for it. Gong Ruidong was not stupid to begin with. It was just that when she saw Xiao Chen's young appearance, her first impression was that he was lying, so she did not think too much about it. Now that she understood the details of the whole process, she realized that he really did have this ability. It seemed like he had really offended an exalted immortal. However, Gong Ruidong used to be an expert at the 5th level of the nascent soul stage, so it was inevitable for her to have some arrogance in her heart. Although she knew that she had done something wrong, she didn't want to lower her head and admit defeat. She still stubbornly said, "Since I've already offended him, let's just forget about it. No matter what, I was also an expert in the past, and I could be on equal footing with that guy with the surname Xiao. Once I recover my cultivation, I will also have the ability to fight against him. He definitely wouldn't dare to take revenge on the Burning Sky faction. My dear father, do you think we can wait for you to recover your cultivation? Exalted Immortal Shao can destroy the entire Burning Sky faction right now. And he won't even need to breathe. Gong Xiaoxi immediately shattered his father's imagination without mercy. Impossible. Isn't he afraid that I will take revenge after I recover? Gong Ruidong's face was a little embarrassed, and she still tried to be brave and shouted. You also need to have the ability to do so. Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but feel angry and funny at the same time. He said, You should know that Exalted Immortal Zhao's ability is far beyond the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. I saw with my own eyes that he destroyed old Fart Ying's Dantian with one move. Think about it yourself. Even if you were at your peak, you wouldn't be able to destroy old Fart Ying with one move, right? Then what should I do? Gong Ruidong finally realized that he had caused a huge disaster this time. His face was a little pale, and he said with a troubled expression, When he came over this morning, I had already said everything. His ability is so high, he shouldn't forgive me so easily, right? When he thought of the foundation that the Burning Sky faction had built over so many years, it was very likely that it would be ruined, because he had lost his mind for a moment and said a few careless words. Gong Ruidong was already full of regret. It's good that you know your mistake. Gong Xiaoxi saw that his father had finally realized his mistake, and his tone also softened. He comforted him softly. You don't need to worry too much. As long as you don't do anything too excessive, Exalted Immortal Zhao's temper is still relatively good. Before I came to find you, I had already apologized to him. He shouldn't be too angry. No. If you want to apologize, that's your problem. This disaster was caused by me, so I should personally apologize to him. Gong Ruidong shook his head with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, I just don't know if he will accept my disrespect to him in the morning, and if I rashly go over to apologize now. Gong Xiaoxi felt that what his father said was a little reasonable. After thinking for a while, a light suddenly flashed in his mind, and he slapped his thigh and said, I have an idea. How about this? I will carry you over, and you can personally apologize to him sincerely, and then beg him to recognize you as his disciple. You mean apprenticeship? Gong Ruidong was taken aback. He looked at Gong Xiaoxi with a strange expression and asked, But I remember that you are also Exalted Immortal Zhao's disciple, right? If I also become his disciple, how should we talk about it? Isn't that simple? Gong Xiaoxi carelessly patted his own chest. When the time comes, we will talk about it separately. You can call me senior brother, and I will continue to call you father. Then, all right, it seems like we can only do this now. Although Gong Ruidong still felt that it was a little strange, there was no other way at the moment. Besides, if Exalted Immortal Shao was really as he said, and was able to cure his injuries, then he might very well be at the level of the legendary nascent soul paragon. If he could become the disciple of a nascent soul paragon, then the matter of seniority wouldn't be a problem at all. With this thought, Gong Ruidong also agreed. The two of them discussed for a while, and felt that this matter should not be delayed. It would be better not to wait until tomorrow, and go over that night to finalize this matter. Gong Ruidong simply packed up, and then leaned on Gong Xiaoxi's back, and quickly rushed towards Xiao Chen's residence. At the same time, on the other side of the Burning Heavens faction, in a beautifully decorated guest room, Hongzhu was pouting and complaining to Xiao Chen in a low voice. Chapter 1390. In the morning, Xiao Chen came back rather early. Hongzhu was a little surprised and asked curiously. Xiao Chen had nothing to do, so he simply explained the situation. After hearing it, Hongzhu couldn't help but stomp her feet in anger. Although she saw that Xiao Chen didn't seem to care, she was extremely dissatisfied with Gong Ruidong, whose eyes grew on his forehead. Unable to find an opportunity in the afternoon, after finishing dinner, Hongzhu complained to Xiao Chen, wanting to leave the Burning Sky faction as soon as possible. Hongzhu felt that since the other party didn't want to see her, there was no point in continuing to stay. It would be better to just leave. Little Hongzhu, don't make trouble. We've just arrived in the cultivation world, and are unfamiliar with the people and the place. It wasn't easy for us to find a sect that we can rely on for a while. No matter what, we should first ask them to help us inquire about the whereabouts of Cheng Minjing and the others, right? Xiao Chen helplessly comforted him. Besides, didn't Gong Xiaoxi already come over to apologize? Calm down, it's easy to get wrinkles when you're angry. Xiao Chen chose to stay in the Burning Sky faction because he was somewhat helpless. Even if his strength was outstanding, he was only one person. Including Hong Zhu, there were only two people. In such a vast and boundless cultivation world, with just the strength of two people, where could they go to find others? If there was any other way, Xiao Chen couldn't be bothered to stay in the Burning Sky faction and wait for news from others all day long. That stinky old man Gong Ruidong. It's fine if he looks down on me, but he even dares to scold this big sister's husband. Although Hong Zhu could understand Xiao Chen, she still felt indignant and resentfully muttered. You went to treat his injuries with good intentions, but in the end, not only did you not get any benefits, you even ended up being called a swindler. I'm so angry. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Hong Zhu simply reached out and grabbed the pillow placed on the bed. Her small fists continuously pounded on it while she muttered something, as if she was casting a spell on Gong Ruidong. Forget it. That old man has been staying at home for too long in order to recuperate. He probably hasn't seen much of the world. There's no need to stoop to his level. Seeing Hong Zhu angrily pounding the pillow, Xiao Chen could not help but laugh. He had never imagined that this girl, who was usually so flirtatious, would occasionally reveal such a cute side. Hong Zhu pouted and was about to say something when he suddenly heard a knock on the door, followed by Gong Xiaoxi's cautious voice. Hi, Immortal Master, Master Hong. Have you rested? I have something to discuss with you. Is that convenient? It's not convenient. It was already the middle of the night. What was there to discuss? Can't you wait until tomorrow to come back? Hong Zhu had originally been filled with a belly full of anger and had been worried about not having a place to vent it, so he decided to vent it all on Gong Xiaoxi. Hong Zhu had originally felt that the atmosphere tonight was pretty good and had wanted to take the opportunity to throw a little tantrum and have Xiao Chen coax her. Who would have thought that Gong Xiaoxi would be so thick-skinned as to disturb them? She had nearly exploded with rage. At this, Gong Xiaoxi was instantly dumbfounded. He stood rooted to the spot for a long time, but was unable to say anything. His mind was completely blank, and he did not know what to do. Leaning against Gong Xiaoxi's back, Gong Ruidong also had a bitter expression on his face. He subconsciously thought that Hong Zhu's words were High Immortal Zhao's. Now that the other party was not even willing to see him, it seemed that he was really angry. This time, he was really in trouble. Alright, little Hong Zhu, don't make a fuss. Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and shook his head. He lightly pinched Hong Zhu's cheek, using his eyes to signal her not to cause trouble. Only then did he raise his voice and say, We haven't slept yet, come in. After saying that, Xiao Chen thought for a moment, then stood up and walked over to open the door that he had originally closed. Hong Zhu could not help but be stunned by Xiao Chen's sudden attack. She unconsciously touched her cheek, and her pretty face blushed slightly. Her mind also began to run wild. What does Xiao Chen mean by this action? Could it be that he has suddenly become enlightened? I've never seen him act so intimately in the past. Also, what does that look in his eyes mean? Could it be that he wants to do something intimate with me tonight? So embarrassing, should I agree or not? Seeing that Xiao Chen had opened the door for him, Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly walked into the room with a smile on his face. He kept saying, Hi, Immortal Master, I'm really sorry. Why did you disturb me so late at night? Mistress Hong, your face is so red, could it be that you're sick? Do you want me to help you find a doctor? Father, why did you hit me? Just now, as Gong Xiaoxi was speaking, he raised his head and saw Hong Zhu's blushing face. Feeling somewhat puzzled, he casually asked, but before he could finish his words, he felt Gong Ruidong suddenly hit his back. Go to hell, what are you saying? You're the one who's sick in the head. Hong Zhu came to her senses and glared fiercely at Gong Xiaoxi, before turning her head away in annoyance. Hi Immortal Xiao, Miss Hong. My son doesn't have the slightest bit of eyesight, and he doesn't really know how to speak. Please don't take it to heart, hee hee hee. Gong Ruidong hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Gong Ruidong was an experienced person. With just a glance, she could guess that Xiao Chun and Hong Zhu were about to do something that adults like to do. She just had to interrupt them before they could even begin, so they would definitely be angry. Your son is indeed a bit of a fool, but I think you're also quite simple-minded. Glancing at Gong Ruidong, who was lying on Gong Xiaoxi's back, Xiao Chun frowned and asked, "All right, hurry up and tell me. Is there something urgent for you to rush over to find me in the middle of the night? If there's nothing else, we're going to sleep." There's something. Gong Xiaoxi nodded repeatedly. He first placed his father on a chair at the side, then ordered a servant to bring over a cup of hot tea. After the hot tea was served, Gong Xiaoxi took the teacup and respectfully handed it to Xiao Chun. Then, he bowed slightly and said with a shy smile, "Hi, immortal master. Although we're already master and disciple, I have yet to formally acknowledge you as my disciple. As the saying goes, etiquette cannot be discarded, so I've specially come over this time to make up for it. Is it really worth it for you to disturb me in the middle of the night for such a trivial matter? Can't you come back tomorrow?" Xiao Chun could not help but roll his eyes. However, he still reached out and took the teacup. Just as he was about to raise his head and drink the tea, Xiao Chun saw Gong Xiaoxi suddenly kneel down in front of him with a thud. He jumped in fright and immediately dodged to the side. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, he scolded, "Are you crazy? Isn't it just acknowledging me as your master? Can't you do it properly? Why do you have to kneel and kowtow? Are you trying to shorten my lifespan or what?" You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.